meeting is now streaming.
It says it's streaming.
Yeah, it says live on YouTube.
It's going right now. It's starting to come up.
Hold on, you want to watch?
Do we need to share the new link then?
Okay. You can't pull it, okay?
No, I have
Do you want your computer?
it. No, I don't want.
I
don't. No,
Back out of that and go back in.
It says
Touch the screen, okay?
I did.
Going right now. Oh, it's not that. Starting to come up.
Oh,
All right, so sit tight. Let me.
should I share this link?
Are we
Yeah, I was
live?
gonna say, do we need to share the new one?
We live?
Yes, we do need to share the new one.
Okay.
Should I tell some knock jokes?
Yes, please
Some-
feel free.
And by knock jokes, I mean, what did what do you get when you what did the see?
Oh God.
Exactly. That's the joke.
I can't change my name on here. Danielle.
Well,
It's okay. Stuff happens.
what did the basketball say to the old baseball?
To my account.
No, you didn't say that. You have a bald spot.
Were we supposed to laugh? I forgot.
So, fun fact, my favorite pastime is coming up with jokes that make absolutely no sense, but
Oh.
sound like they could be a joke. So, yeah. That's what you can get.
Well, we just lost the whole audience.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Why did Courtney
Oh
love?
God. I knew this was gonna happen.
It always comes back to Courtney Love.
All right. So do we have a link to share out?
We
to
do.
people?
If you go to the
Yeah.
top left of your Zoom,
If you click on the live on YouTube button, it'll say copy streaming link.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right. Thank you. I just wanted to share it.
why? Oh, you gotta make sure you gotta turn that volume down.
Yeah.
I just heard me go why like at like 500 decibels. Is that a lot? It could be that could be a low amount. I don't know enough about audio things. This is Clue. Welcome to Clue. Hey there, guys. Welcome to the stream. Today we're playing Clue. Why don't you like, comment, subscribe, hit that little bell notification to be updated. Every little bit counts. But before we get started, speaking of counts,
We're here to ask for your money.
numbers were never my strong suit. So when it comes to coding, I'm not good at it. That's why you got to go to squarespace.com to get your.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored, but maybe one day Squarespace, if you're out there.
Yeah. Create all your favorite websites. Also Audible. Go to audible.com. You can listen to your favorite audio version of Clue. Maybe
We don't have a code, but you know.
Yeah.
Shout out to Audible.
Put in the code Big Clue. And get 50% off your next order.
Big clue. All right.
So many letters.
A new post real quick.
Are we able to see if anybody's watching?
I think you can from the stream. Let me see.
We have it up on our TV and it says one watching, but also we're watching. So
And I'm pretty sure.
That's it.
Oh crap! I got to adjust the one. from
Tessa's
Karen.
watching though. So. Shout out to Tessa. Hi.
Okay, so I just shared the new link on the page itself, and
says 3 watching. I think we have 3 watching. There we go.
We're doing Get a Clue, right?
oh yeah, yeah, Lindsay Lohan.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I'm Brenda Song. You guys didn't know that?
I'm the homeless teacher.
I look exactly like Brenda Song.
Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba.
Just waiting for some people to show up.
Just wait. This is
And
what you.
I promise I'm not going through and highlighting my lines right now.
Right.
That's
this
definitely-
second.
You're definitely prepared.
I'm super prepared.
Welcome to the Clue live stream that was put together in a week.
As someone who works for television, Todd is always prepared.
Mhm.
This is actually an equity production. We are all, we all have our equity cards.
Okay. So
Buttons on shirt.
need to give some people a couple extra minutes to try and find us now that we got a brand new spanking link. Slaps the car.
Spanking spank.
So the one I shared is correct, I hope.
I think so.
I shared it when you guys told me how to share it.
Yeah, that's right then.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yep, for sure. Yep, every single person that shared that did the right one.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay. Madison, are you okay? Who knows? Maybe
Bear with us, everybody, while we sort through some technical difficulties. / get everybody.
Goodness.
Yeah, it is.
We should say a big thank you to Josh for putting this whole thing together.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
welcome. Thanks for your patience. Was everything changed a few dozen times?
Hey, this is great. I'm enjoying it.
Josh, I meant to tell you. One of the pages on here, like it printed both sides, but it was the same thing on both sides. I was looking last night. I'm like, I don't say that twice.
Oh,
I was so confused.
does
I,
it continue? Are you missing a page?
I think it's all good.
Okay.
We'll find out.
What?
Yeah.
What? Is this the
Not that I
editing
really
one?
have that many lines. Where is it?
You know what? I'm very tempted. How different is the old one from the new one?
It's really just formatting mainly, as well as trying to catch a couple of
You know, like you can't cook without breaking a
Well,
few.
no, I think that's still the same.
right, because I caught it this morning. I was like, oh, that's still there.
That's fine. Actually, I've got to remember where the heck that's at.
I have
I'm-
one
Line
thing.
about breaking the eggs.
What's
I
that?
think that's my favorite line. We should just keep that in.
You can't cook without breaking an egg.
Yeah, isn't
Can't
that
cook without breaking a
really
few.
big, like Colonel
Okay.
Mustard? Like, come on, we're gonna do this.
It's after This Is War.
This is war, Peacock.
Or peacock.
Yeah, where is that at in the script?
Isn't that when they go in to see Yvette after she was screaming?
No, I thought it was at the
Not
end.
later.
I thought it was close to the end too.
When he says this is war?
I think
Yeah.
so.
It's right before they start splitting up the first time, isn't it?
Yeah. It's
Search
Yeah.
midway
search
through.
for the word war and you'll find it.
Oh my
Ouch,
gosh.
buddy.
But I was gonna say, like, it's when they split up, so it's not like in the beginning, but it's not that close to the end.
Or profiteer.
Like the middle.
Like the middle.
here.
All right, let's see.
Didn't ask for the sass, thank you. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, it is on page 50.
Seeing as how I dealt with a sassy 2-year-old today, I'm good. He likes to tell me that my mom is his mom.
Your mom is everyone's mom.
That's fair. He says, "Yo, tay, mom."
Okay, so we will kind of just try to we'll just kind of get started a little bit. So first, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious what we're doing, but in case you stumbled upon this link and you don't know, we are here. We're going to do a live reading of the 1985 movie Clue. And I think I
We are?
legitimately speak for everybody. This is like an untouchable movie. Like it's it's a weird little cult classic that absolutely was ahead of its time and bombed because it was ahead of its time. Slight spoiler, but we are going to do all 3 endings. What else? Let's talk about, it does say somewhere on there, you see Virtually Happy Presents. That's us. The name kind of basically comes from why we're doing all of this. You know, the world's pretty rough right now. You can't exactly go in person to help somebody for the most part, unless it's absolutely pivotal. But I think the least we can do is try and entertain each other for a couple hours and make the world a little bit lighter. So when we're all online together, virtually, if you will, we are virtually happy. And
Josh said, ready to make the world better plates?
Ready to make the world better plates? So for anybody who for some reason doesn't know us, we'll go around a little bit and just give a quick hi there. I think you already know, my name's Josh. I'm going to be playing Wadsworth tonight.
I'm Danielle. I'm Mrs. Peacock.
How about Mrs. White?
Hi, I'm Megan, or May, and I'm playing Mrs. White.
How about Colonel Mustard?
I am Toddy Dart. I will be playing Colonel Mustard, if I can talk correctly.
Colonel.
Yeah, you know, that's
remix.
That's a good point to interject. Like Toddy
We
said,
will stutter lots.
yeah, like Toddy said earlier, first time for us doing this. We have a pretty mixed group in terms of some of us have a lot of dramatic experience. Some of us have very little dramatic experience. And this is the first time we're doing it like this. So bear with us. Also, I think that kind of makes it fun though. So we'll keep going. How about Yvette?
Daddy Dart. Hi.
Efficient. How about Professor Plum?
Hello, my name is Dalton Pittman-Cahill. I will be portraying the role of Professor Plum.
Hyphen spelled out.
Yeah, the hyphen is spelled out.
Oh yeah, it's H-Y, you know.
Hi, Pippin.
HY Finn.
That's how you gotta pronounce it.
How about Miss Scarlet?
Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie. I will be portraying Miss Scarlet today.
And of course, our Mr. Green.
Hi, I'm Curtis. I'll be Mr. Green for today.
Whoop, whoop. And before I think our last member joins us here in a couple seconds, we'll probably get started anyway. But last two, we have our 2 stage directors / understudies. How about number 1?
Hi, I'm Sherry.
Woo. And number 2.
Hi, I'm Bella.
Sherry, I'm very offended you didn't introduce yourself as Sherry Green Time Lord because you are a Time Lord.
Oh man, it's been a while.
She's so modest.
And then quick shout out to our 2 hype bosses. They're not here with us, but they're watching virtually, kind of giving us the lowdown on the outside. Shout out to
Holly
Buddy and Derek. Thank you guys.
Buddy
That's
Connie's.
my own personal hype boss.
Woo,
Tessa's
hi,
out
boss.
there watching.
Buddy, I miss you.
Tap once
I
if
miss
you're
you
watching.
so much.
All right. Elsewise, I was trying to give Madison a couple minutes here, but I think
Oh,
She's
in.
popping in now.
She's
Is she
in here, but
coming?
she's just not.
Not in here.
oh, here she comes. Hang on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear
but
you.
we can't see you.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
changing my name.
Hey, no one look.
I was going to say we are on.
No one look.
Also,
Because no one's
Johnny
driving.
and I would like to
Oh,
apologize.
buddy.
The 2-year-old gets in the way.
I miss you so much.
That's ours.
He's gonna play Mr. Body, right?
Little,
Yeah.
little Dart.
Yeah.
Lil Dart.
Madison, you're out. Bruce is in.
Have if anybody can hear Brew. Well, no, you can't because I'm muted, but he is currently sitting next to me going, "What you doing, bitch?"
You
He
know,
told us that earlier. He said, "Oh, happy birthday, bitch."
Ugh.
That's my kid.
What is May May teaching during the day?
Oh, that was not May May. Thank you.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, mostly enough. That's what I get during the day.
All right,
That's
and
what I
there's Madison. All right, and Madison, real quick, just give us a give us a stable angle on you.
Give us a Dramedy.
I love the Blair Witch.
We get an introduction.
Oh, is she gone?
Nope.
she's
I
there.
think she's there.
There.
Wait,
She's
hold
just
on.
She's just having an earthquake right now or something. I don't know.
Wait a damn minute.
Okay.
there's some lighting that might work. I've been messing with this stupid light this whole time. All right, that feels better.
All right.
I can't
And then-
fix mine.
And then Madison, real quick, just give us a quick rundown of who you're playing.
I am Mr. Body, the cop, the singing telegram girl, Mrs. Ho, the motorist, and the chief.
And keep an eye out, Madison. I think there's several points in the script where it says the evangelist. That's the chief.
Noted.
All right. Wonderful. All right.
He's
So
still streaming. Thank you.
thank you. Anyhow, I think we're good to go. Is everybody feeling good?
Woo!
So much enthusiasm. Great job. All right. Sherry, take us away.
The opening credits appear over a sky growing stormy. We open on Wadsworth's car as it travels through the wind of an oncoming storm. It pulls up to the gate of Hill House. Hill House is a large, imposing mansion, the perfect setting for the events that are about to unfold. Wadsworth takes out a key and unlocks the gate and drives the car up to the front door. He exits the car, holding a bag and looking at the two barking guard dogs. The dogs approach him and suddenly jump. Wadsworth quickly pulls two large beef bones out of the bag, throwing them to the dogs. They trot away as Wadsworth rolls up the bag, then cinches their chains to prevent them from reaching the door. Grabbing his dropped coat from the porch, he steps toward the door and pauses, something underfoot having caught his attention. He checks the bottom of his foot and looks at the dogs in disgust, both preoccupied with their bones. Wadsworth opens the front door of Hill House and wipes off his foot. He enters and hangs up his coat. Shake, Rattle, and Roll plays in the background. The hall of Hill House is remarkable, elegant, but not gaudy. It is furnished in dark wood and brass with crystal chandeliers. Superimposed on the screen are the words, New England, 1954. Wadsworth steps briskly down the hall towards the library. 3 of its 4 walls are covered with books, the last full of windows. Yvette, a young, attractive French maid, is polishing a glass, bouncing along to the music as she works. Wadsworth enters and turns off the record player. The music stops.
Is everything ready?
She replies in a French accent.
Already.
You have your instructions?
Yvette nods. Wadsworth exits. Yvette sniffs the air, examining the bottoms of her shoes. We go now to the kitchen, white-tiled, narrow. A meat freezer is noticeable to the right, a counter to its left. Mrs. Ho, the cook, is sharpening a knife. Joseph McCarthy is speaking on the television in the background. Wadsworth enters.
Is everything all right, Mrs. Ho?
She turns, knife in hand, inadvertently pointing it at his throat.
Dinner will be ready at 7:30.
Outside the front door, a man's shadow is cast on the exterior wall. His hand reaches out and pulls twice on the doorbell chain, the bell ringing with each pull. Wadsworth exits the kitchen. The man now stands by the front door, staring uncomfortably at the dogs, who sit nearby, growling at him. He jumps slightly at the sound of Wadsworth opening the door.
Good evening.
Evening. I don't know if
Yes, indeed, sir, you are expected, Colonel. May I take your coat? It is Colonel Mustard, isn't it?
No, that's not my name. My name is Colonel.
Wadsworth raises a hand sharply to stop him.
Forgive me, sir. But tonight you may well feel obliged to my employer for the use of an alias.
Mustard sniffs around and checks his shoe as Wadsworth hangs his coat and hat. The pair starts across the hall.
And who are you, sir?
I'm Wadsworth, sir, the butler.
As they enter the library, Yvette is pouring champagne at a table.
Yvette, you will attend to the colonel and give him anything he requires. Within reason, that is.
Wadsworth exits, closing the door behind him. The door is also a bookshelf, blending in with the rest of the walls.
Remix.
Oh. Hold on.
Oh, Wadsworth, I was.
Mustard turns to discover the door has somehow disappeared. The bell rings. We cut again to the front door. A woman dressed in black stands, reading a letter. She folds the letter as Wadsworth opens the door.
Do come in, madam. You are expected.
Do you know who I am?
Only that you are to be known as Mrs. White.
Yes, it said so in the letter. But why?
Wadsworth removes her coat, showing off its brilliant white lining. Mrs. White sniffs several times, then checks her shoes. Interior ground floor library. Yvette hands Colonel Mustard a drink. Just as it reaches his hand, the door opens into Colonel Mustard, pinning him to the wall.
Ah, may I introduce you? Mrs. White, this is Yvette, the maid.
The two women react to each other with disdain.
I see you know each other.
Mrs. White turns away as Colonel Mustard emerges from behind the door.
Hello.
Hello.
Exterior roadside. A woman dressed to the nines hunches over the hood of her broken-down car. An owl hoots in the background. She emerges, obviously frustrated as she hits the car. Thunder roars in the distance. Seeing headlights a short way away, she smooths her dress. As the car nears, she bends over the engine and lifts a leg. The car screeches to a halt just past her and backs up. She approaches the stranger's car and peers in.
Want a lift?
Yes, please.
She gets in.
Thanks. I'm running late for a dinner date.
Me too. Where are we going?
The woman pulls out a piece of paper.
Let's see. Hill House off Route 41.
Wait a minute. Let me look at that. Well, that's where I'm going. I got a letter like this.
They both look disturbed. The man turns on the windshield wipers as the car pulls away. As we cut back to the library, a middle-aged woman stands in the doorway.
And this is Mrs. Peacock.
How do you do?
Hello.
Yvette, will you go and check that dinner will be ready as soon as all guests have arrived?
Yvette nods and hands Mrs. Peacock a drink. Mrs. Peacock stares momentarily at Yvette's exposed cleavage, mouth agape in disapproval as Yvette exits the library. The doorbell rings again. Outside the front door, we see another man standing, much like Colonel Mustard had. The dogs, of course, are growling. He jumps as Wadsworth opens the door.
Is this the right address to meet Mr. Body?
Oh, you must be Mr. Green.
Yes.
Wadsworth addresses the dogs.
Sit!
Startled, Mr. Green quickly plants himself on a bench by the door.
No, not you, sir.
Mr. Green sheepishly gets up and enters the house. We cut back to the stranger's car.
Should be just off there.
Up the hill, we see the house. The car pulls up to the manor's front gates.
That must be it.
We see the house again. Lightning crashes, illuminating the manor, looking sinister and imposing.
Why is the car stopped?
It's frightened.
The car starts again and rolls up the driveway. Back in the library, lightning crashes, making Mr. Green gulp. Out in the driveway, Professor Plum and Miss Scarlet exit their car, Professor Plum pulling Miss Scarlet by the waist under a large umbrella, shielding them both from the downpouring rain.
What a God-forsaken place.
He slides his hand down her back and squeezes. She shakes his hand off, rightfully disgusted. The door opens, revealing Wadsworth.
Professor Plum and Miss Scarlet. I didn't realize you were acquainted.
She glances at Plum.
We weren't.
They enter. Cut to the library. The doors open to reveal Professor Plum and Miss Scarlet.
May I present Professor Plum And Miss Scarlet.
Everyone nods their acknowledgement. Plum and Scarlet are given wine glasses from Yvette, whom Plum eyes. Professor Plum clinks glasses with Miss Scarlet, who again looks disgusted but not surprised.
Of course, since you've each been addressed by a pseudonym, you'll have realized that nobody here is being addressed by their real names.
The guests look around suspiciously. The camera shifts to the hall. Mrs. Ho bangs a gong aggressively several times. Back in the library, Mr. Green jumps at the sound, dumping his champagne on Mrs. Peacock.
Ah, dinner.
Mr. Green hands her his glass, taking out a handkerchief to clean up with.
I'm sorry. I'm a little accident prone.
She clicks her tongue at him. The guests cross the hall to enter the dining room. It's a small room with similar decor to the hall. At one end of the table, there is a door and a metal partition, both leading to the kitchen. The guests file in.
You'll find your names beside your places. Please be seated.
They all find their places. All sit but Colonel Mustard.
Is this place for you?
Indeed, no, sir. I'm merely a humble butler.
And what exactly do you do?
I buttle, sir.
Which means what?
The butler is head of the kitchen dining room. I keep everything tidy, that's all.
Colonel Mustard attempts to continue but is interrupted.
Well, what's all this about, Butler, this dinner party?
Wadsworth helps her with her chair.
Ours is not to reason why, ours is but to do and die.
Die?
Merely, sir, quoting, sir, from Alfred Lord Tennyson.
I prefer Kipling myself. The female of the species is more deadly than the male. You like Kipling, Miss Scarlet?
Sure, I'll eat anything.
Yvette enters carrying a tray, addressing Mrs. Peacock.
Accident soup, madame?
So is this for our host?
Again referencing the head of the table.
No, sir, for the seventh guest, Mr. Body.
I thought Mr. Body was our host.
So did
So
I.
did I.
So who is our host, Mr. Wadsworth?
Wadsworth chuckles with a closed smile, pouring drinks for the table.
Well, I want to start while it's hot.
Oh, now shouldn't we wait for the other guest?
We'll keep something going for him.
What did you have in mind, dear?
Silence fills the room as Yvette and Wadsworth exit to the kitchen. Professor Plum slurps soup from his spoon. Mrs. White disapproves, then does the same. Mustard, Scarlet, and Green stare at them, spoons poised near their mouths. They do it again. Silence starts to break as everybody begins to eat.
Well, someone's got to break the ice, and it might as well be me. I mean, I'm used to being a hostess. It's part of my husband's work, and it's always difficult when a group of new friends meet together for the first time to get acquainted. So I'm perfectly prepared to start the ball rolling. I mean, I have absolutely no idea what we're doing here or what I'm doing here or what this place is about, but I am determined to enjoy myself, and I am very intrigued. And oh my, this soup's delicious, isn't it?
Everyone sits bewildered, mouths open.
You say you're used to being a hostess as a part of your husband's work?
Yes, it's an integral part of your life when you're the wife of a. Oh, well, then I forgot we're not supposed to say who we really are. Though heavens to Betsy, I don't know why.
Don't you?
I know who you are.
Well, aren't you going to tell us?
How do you know who I am?
I work in Washington too.
Oh, so you're a politician's wife.
Yeah, yes, I am.
Uh-oh, did we lose Todd?
Anyone there? I think we might have lost.
Oh, we lost the darts.
Oh, no.
Oh no.
Oh, there's one.
Everyone just finish your
There's two.
Finish
All
your
right.
food.
We lost. We lost it. I don't know what happened.
Uh-oh.
That's
Uh-oh.
showbiz, baby.
Oh, you darn, I tell you what.
So the last thing I said was, well, come on then. Who's your husband?
No,
There you
you
go.
didn't.
We didn't hear that.
I didn't say it. I didn't say it, but nobody heard me.
Suddenly, Wadsworth opens the door from the kitchen.
So, what does your husband do?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, he just lies around on his back all day.
Sounds like hard work to me.
Yvette opens the kitchen partition suddenly. The noise coincides with a crash of thunder. Mr. Green, jumpy as ever, spills his drink again, this time on Miss Scarlet.
I'm sorry. I'm a little bit accident prone.
He starts to wipe off her upper chest.
Ah, watch it.
He stops. Wadsworth starts clearing soup bowls. Yvette starts serving food.
Excusez-moi.
The guests start eating, Mrs. Peacock more eagerly than the rest.
This is one of my favorite recipes.
I know, madam.
So, what do you do in Washington, D.C., Mr. Green?
There's a very slight pause.
Come on, what do you do? I mean, how are we to get acquainted if we don't say anything about ourselves?
Perhaps he doesn't want to get acquainted with you.
Well, I'm sure I don't know, but if I wasn't trying to keep the conversation going, then we'd all just be sitting here in an embarrassed silence.
Are you afraid of silence, Mrs. Peacock?
Yes. What? No, why?
Oh, well, it just seems to me that you seem to suffer from what we call pressure of speech.
We? Who's we? Are you a shrink?
Well, I do know a little bit about psychological medicine, yes.
Are you a doctor?
I am, but I don't practice.
Practice makes perfect. I think most men need a little practice, don't you, Mrs. Peacock?
Mrs. Peacock shrugs, very uncomfortable.
So what do you do, Professor?
Well, I work for the United Nations Organization.
Another politician. Jesus.
No, I work for a branch of you-know-who. Of the World Health Organization.
Well, what is your area of special concern?
Family planning. What about you, Colonel? Are you a real colonel?
I am, sir.
You're not going to mention the coincidence that you also live in Washington, D.C.?
How did you know that? Have we met before?
I've certainly seen you before, although you may not have seen me.
So, Miss Scarlet, does this mean you live in Washington too?
Sure do.
Does anyone here not live in Washington, D.C.?
I don't.
Yes, but you work for the United Nations. That's a government job. And the rest of us live in a government town. Anyone here not earn their living in the government in one way or another?
Wadsworth, where's our host and why have we been brought here?
The doorbell rings. Wadsworth exits. Off screen, we hear the door open. Wadsworth speaks. Both the staff and the guests all listen carefully.
Ah, good evening. You are eagerly awaited.
You locking me in? I'll take the key.
Over my dead body, sir. May I take your bag?
No, I'll leave it here till I need it.
It contains evidence, I presume.
Surprises, my friend. That's what it contains. Surprises.
Wadsworth enters the dining room, followed by the man he was speaking with.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Mr. Buddy?
What are they all doing here?
Eating dinner. Do sit down, Mr. Buddy.
Thanks.
He sits at the head of the table. Yvette places a bowl of soup in front of him.
No, honey, you can take that away.
Yvette backs away, suspicious. There's palpable tension in the room. Mrs. Peacock hits the table.
Look, I demand to know what's going on. Now, why have we all been dragged up to this horrible place?
Well, I believe we all received a letter.
He pulls a letter from his coat.
My letter says, it will be to your advantage to be present on this date because a Mr. Body will bring to end a certain long-standing confidential and painful financial liability. It is signed, a friend.
I received a similar letter.
So did we, didn't we?
I also received a letter.
Yvette comes back with his dinner plate filled.
No thanks, Yvette. I just ate.
Now, how do you know her name?
We know each other.
He pulls up the back of her short skirt and ruffled slip.
Don't we, dear?
She recoils.
Forgive my curiosity, Mr. Buddy, but did your letter say the same thing?
No.
I see. Can I interest any of you in fruit or dessert? In that case, may I suggest we adjourn to the study for coffee and brandy, at which point I believe our unknown host will reveal his intentions.
The guests enter the study, each looking around for their host. Among the room's furnishings are several couches, a large cabinet-style armoire, a drink station, and a desk, among others.
Well, there's no one here.
Please help yourself to brandy and be seated.
Wadsworth goes to the desk and picks up a manila envelope. It reads, Wadsworth, please open after dinner.
Mind if I smoke?
Professor Plum, seated next to Miss Scarlet, lights her cigarette. Wadsworth opens the envelope and peruses the contents.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm instructed to tell you what you all have in common with each other, unless you would care to do the honors, Mr. Body.
Why me? They know who I am?
I don't think so. You've never identified yourself to them, I believe.
Mr. Body stands abruptly.
It's a hoax. I suggest we all leave.
He takes off out the study door.
I'm sorry, sir. You cannot leave this house.
We follow Mr. Body to the front door. Wadsworth and the guests follow close behind.
No? Who's gonna stop me?
There's no way out. All the windows have bars. All the doors are locked.
This is an outrage. You cannot hold us prisoner.
The guests all loudly agree.
Yeah. Agree.
Ladies and gentlemen, please return to the study. Everything will be explained.
The guests reluctantly file back into the study. Mr. Body walks past Wadsworth to the opposite end of the hall.
You too, Mr. Body.
Body starts running with Wadsworth in pursuit.
Other way.
Mr. Body runs into the conservatory, looking around. Potted plants and fallen leaves cover all but the walls, 3 of which are brick. The outer wall is glass, leading to the outside. Rain loudly and visibly raps against the glass. Mr. Body leans down and picks up a brick to throw. Wadsworth enters.
You can't get out that way.
Why not? It's only glass.
Suddenly, a vicious Doberman jumps at the glass, barking and snarling. Mr. Body drops the brick. The 2 men rejoin the guests in the study. Yvette presents a tray of cognac to each guest. Wadsworth takes up his envelope again.
Ladies and gentlemen, you all have one thing in common. You are all being blackmailed. For some considerable time, all of you have been paying what you can afford, and in some cases, more than you can afford, to someone who threatens to expose you. And none of you know who's blackmailing you, do you?
Oh, please. I've never heard anything so ridiculous. I mean, nobody could blackmail me. My life is an open book. I've never done anything wrong.
Anybody else wish to deny it?
The guests look at each other, but no one responds.
Very well. As everyone here is in the same boat, there's no harm in me revealing some details, and my instructions are to do so. Thank you, Yvette.
Dismissed from the room, she leaves. Mr. Body's eyes follow her out.
Don't you think you might spare us this humiliation?
I'm sorry. Professor Plum, you were once a professor of psychiatry specializing in helping paranoid and homicidal lunatics suffering from delusions of grandeur.
Oh, yes, but now I work for the United Nations.
So your work has not changed. But you don't practice medicine at the UN. His license to practice has been lifted, correct?
Why? What did he do?
You know what doctors aren't allowed to do with their lady patients?
Yeah.
Well, he did it.
Oh, how disgusting.
Are you making moral judgments, Mrs. Peacock? How then do you justify taking bribes in return for delivering your husband, Senator Peacock's vote to certain lobbyists?
My husband is a paid consultant. There's nothing wrong with that.
Not if it's publicly declared, perhaps, but if the payment is delivered by slipping used greenbacks in plain envelopes under the door of the men's room, how would you describe that transaction?
I'd say it stinks.
Well, how would you know? Were you in that men's room?
No, it is true.
Mrs. Peacock stands in protest.
No, it's the vicious lie.
She sits quickly back down on the edge of the couch.
I'm sure we're all glad to hear that. But you've been paying blackmail for over a year now to keep that story out of the papers.
Well, I'm willing to believe you. I too am being blackmailed for something I didn't do.
Me too.
Me too.
Me too.
I lost a page. It got copied over, so I have no idea what I'm supposed to say there. And
It was
me.
when
All right.
the internet went out.
All right.
All right.
I'll
Me
keep
too.
going.
You're
What
not
about
being
you?
Red
blackmailed.
Scarlet.
Oh my God. All right. So me too and me. Not me.
You're not being blackmailed. You're not being
Oh, I'm being
blackmailed.
blackmailed, all right.
Oh no.
But I did what I'm being blackmailed for.
Okay.
What did you do?
Oh, my internet connection is unstable.
Same.
It says
Yeah,
that.
there's an echo going
Apparently
on where I hear
mine,
her.
too.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
no.
I got it too.
Oh no.
Are we back?
We
Yeah.
back.
We good?
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll just keep going. Oh, I'm being blackmailed, all right. But I did what I'm being blackmailed for.
What did you do?
Well, to be perfectly frank, I run a specialized hotel and a telephone service which provide gentlemen with the company of a young lady for a short while.
Oh yeah. Well, what's the phone number?
Miss Scarlet rolls her eyes.
So how do you know Colonel Mustard works in Washington? Is he one of your clients?
Colonel Mustard stands, crossing the room to confront Miss Scarlet.
Certainly not.
I was asking Miss Scarlet.
Well, you tell him it's not true.
It's not true.
Is that true?
No, it's not true.
Haha, so it is true.
A double negative.
Double negative? You mean you have photographs?
That sounds like a confession to me. In fact, the double negative has led to proof positive. I'm afraid you gave yourself away.
Are you trying to make me look stupid in front of the other guests?
You don't need any help from me, sir.
That's right.
He pauses, realizing what he said.
But seriously, I don't see what's so terrible about Colonel Mustard visiting a house of ill fame.
Professor
Most
Plum
soldiers-
puts his hand on Scarlet's leg.
Most soldiers do, don't they?
She quickly removes his hand.
Oh, please.
But he holds a sensitive security post in the Pentagon. And Colonel, you drive a very expensive car for someone who lives on the Colonel's pay.
I don't. I came into money when my mommy and daddy, during the war, when I lost my mommy and daddy.
Wadsworth is puzzled, but soon recovers.
Mrs. White, you've been paying our friend the blackmailer ever since your husband died under, shall we say, mysterious circumstances?
Miss Scarlet cackles scandalously.
Why is that funny? Why is
I
that
see.
funny?
That's why he was lying on his back in his coffin.
I didn't kill him.
Then why are you playing blackmailer?
I don't want a scandal, do I? We had a very humiliating public confrontation. He was deranged, lunatic. He didn't actually seem to like me very much. He had threatened to kill me in public.
Why would he want to kill you in public?
I think she meant he threatened in public to kill her.
Oh. And was that his final word on the matter?
Being killed is pretty final, wouldn't you say?
And yet he was the one who died, not you, Mrs. White, not you.
What did he do for a living?
He was a scientist, nuclear physics.
What was he like?
He was always a rather stupid, optimistic man. I mean, I'm afraid it came as a great shock to him when he died. But when he was found dead at home, his head had been cut off and his,
The men in the room cross their legs.
I had been out all evening at the movies.
Do you miss him?
Well, it's a matter of life after death. Now that he's dead, I have a life.
But he was your second husband. Your first husband also disappeared.
But that was his job. He was an illusionist.
But he never reappeared.
He wasn't a very good illusionist.
Mr. Green clears his throat and stands.
I have something to say. I'm not going to wait for Wadsworth here to unmask me. I work for the State Department, and I'm a homosexual.
Wadsworth, wide-eyed, looks for Green's file. Mrs. Peacock clicks her tongue in disgust.
I feel no personal shame or guilt about this, but I must keep it a secret or I will lose my job on security grounds. Thank you.
Mr. Green sits back down next to Professor Plum, who quickly stands and walks away.
Well, that just leaves Mr. Body.
What's your little secret?
This secret? Oh, hadn't you guessed? He's the one who's blackmailing you all.
Lightning crashes. Mr. Body looks very satisfied.
You bastard!
The guests advance on Mr. Body as he stands. Colonel Mustard challenges Mr. Body to a fight, throwing up his hands in a boxing stance.
Come on, put him up, pal! Put him up! Put him!
Mr. Body steps on the Colonel's toes.
Oh!
And pokes him in the eyes Three Stooges style.
Gentlemen!
If you can't fight fairly, don't fight at all!
Nobody calls me a bastard.
Professor Plum and Mr. Green hold back Mr. Body as Miss Scarlet helps Colonel Mustard, who was laid out on the floor. Mrs. White approaches the restrained Mr. Body, placing her hands gently on his face before kneeing him in the crotch. He collapses to the ground, letting out a high-pitched noise. Mrs. Peacock claps and whoops in the background.
Is that necessary, Mrs. White?
Wait! The police are coming!
The guests begin to clamor in disapproval.
Listen! Blackmail depends on secrecy. You've all admitted how he's been able to blackmail you. All you have to do is tell the police how he's been able to blackmail you. Wow. Okay. All you have to do is tell the police. He'll be convicted and all your troubles will be over.
Mr. Body brings himself to his feet.
It's not so easy. He'll never tell the police.
Then I shall. I have evidence in my possession and this conversation is being tape recorded.
We see Yvette in the billiard room, drinking cognac and listening to a tape recorder whose reels are turning.
Point of order. Tape recordings are not admissible evidence.
Back in the study, general confusion ensues.
Ladies and gentlemen, the police will be here in about 45 minutes. Tell them the truth and Mr. Body will be behind bars.
Mr. Body goes for the hall. Colonel Mustard curls a fist. Wadsworth interjects.
Where are you going this time?
I think I can help them make up their minds. Can I just get my little bag from the hall?
Mr. Body exits, retrieving his bag from the front door and returning to the study. Setting the case down on the coffee table, he opens his luggage, revealing a number of black boxes of various sizes, each wrapped in a purple ribbon.
Who can guess what's in here, huh?
Evidence against us, no doubt.
Mr. Body chuckles, handing out the boxes.
We didn't know we were meeting you tonight. Did you know you were meeting us?
Oh, yes.
What were you told precisely?
Merely that we were all meeting to discuss our little financial arrangements, and if I did not appear, Wadsworth would be informing the police about it all. Naturally, I could hardly resist putting in an appearance. Excuse me.
He crosses the room to stand by the door to the hall once more.
Open them.
Why not? I enjoy getting presents from strange men.
She pauses, opening her box, and removes the item inside.
A candlestick? What's this for?
Mrs. White opens her box and reveals a rope tied in a noose. Mr. Green takes his box in one hand. He opens it and tips the contents into his other hand, a lead pipe. Mr. Body sips on a cognac, watching almost gleefully. Colonel Mustard opens his box and removes a wrench. Professor Plum takes the lid off his package and looks in. He very cautiously pulls out a revolver. Last but not least, Mrs. Peacock turns a dagger over in her hand.
In your hands, you each have a lethal weapon.
Mr. Body circles the room, pausing to talk directly to each guest.
If you denounce me to the police, you will also be exposed and humiliated. I'll see that in the court. But if one of you kills Wadsworth now,
Wadsworth's eyes widen in shock.
no one but the 7 of us will ever know. He has the key to the front door, which he said he would only be opened over his dead body. I suggest we take him up on the offer.
Mr. Body walks finally back to the study door, closes it, and sets his drink down on a small table underneath the light switch, once again facing the guests.
The only way to avoid finding yourselves on the front pages is for one of you to kill Wadsworth.
He reaches his hand out, hovering over the switch.
Now.
He turns out the lights. In the silence, we hear a thud. Someone inhales, struggling to breathe. A gunshot. Something ceramic shatters. A scream. The lights go up. Mrs. Peacock, who turned on the light, drops the dagger in horror. We now see Mr. Body lying face first in the carpet.
It's not Wadsworth.
Is he alive?
Stand back. Give him air. Let me see.
He kneels next to Mr. Body, checking his vitals for signs of life.
He's dead.
Who had the gun?
Well, I did.
Then you shot him.
I didn't.
Well, you had the gun. If you didn't shoot him, who did?
Professor Plum turns Mr. Body face up.
Nobody. Look, there's no gunshot wound. Somebody tried to grab the gun from me in the dark, and the gun went off. Look, the bullet broke that vase on the mantle.
Plum, Scarlet, and Mustard all rush toward the mantle, bumping into each other, each apologizing, insisting the others go first.
He's absolutely right. Look, there's a bullet hole here in the wall. See that?
Mr. Green grabs Professor Plum by the lapels.
How did he die?
Don't know. I'm not a forensic expert.
Well, one of us must have killed him.
Well, I didn't do it.
Oh, I need a drink.
She goes to the door and gets Mr. Body's cognac, taking a sip.
Maybe he was poisoned.
Mrs. Peacock looks down at the glass, mouth wide open in revulsion. She drops it and starts to scream incessantly. Mr. Green walks her to a sofa, comforting her through the screaming.
It's Mrs. Peacock. It's all right. It's all right. We don't know anything. Sit down, Mrs. Peacock. Sit.
She sits, but just will not stop screaming. Mr. Green slaps her. She immediately stops screaming. The other guests are taken aback.
I had to stop her screaming.
Was the brandy poisoned?
I don't know.
Miss Scarlet picks up the glass. The remaining cognac spilled into the carpet.
Looks like we'll never know.
Unless she dies too.
They all rush over to scrutinize Mrs. Peacock. A scream erupts from another room. The guests gasp in unison. They run from the study over to the door of the billiard room. Miss Scarlet in the lead. Mrs. Peacock runs behind the rest. Mr. Green tries the door.
It's locked.
Open up.
It's locked.
It must be the murderer.
Why would he scream?
He must have a victim in there. Oh my God. Yvette.
Oh my God.
The doors open. Inside the billiard room, seemingly all of the guests pour in.
You're alive.
No thanks to you.
What do you mean?
You locked me in here with a murderer, you idiot.
So the murderer is in here.
No way.
But where?
Well,
Where? Yeah.
Mr. Green looks behind the door.
We are all looking at him or her. It's what Miss White said in the study. One of you is the killer.
How did you know what we said?
I was listening.
but why were you screaming in here all by yourself?
Because I am frightened. Me too, I also drink the cognac. Mon Dieu, I can't stand here by myself.
Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard go to Yvette.
Come back to the study with us.
Was the murderer?
Colonel Mustard shakes the wrench.
There is safety in numbers, my dear.
The guests leave the room with Yvette. Upon their exit, Wadsworth takes the tape off the spools. We cut back to the study.
There's no indication of how he died?
No.
Oh, this is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. It's not what I'd intended. Oh my God.
Wadsworth plops into a hard-backed chair.
Not what you intended?
So you're not the butler.
I am not the butler, but I am a butler. In fact, I was his butler.
So if he told you to invite us all to his house, why did he arrive late?
I invited you. In fact, I wrote the letters. It was all my idea.
Wait a minute. I don't understand. Why did you invite us here to meet your late employer? Were you assisting him in his blackmail?
Wadsworth stands defensively.
Certainly not.
I think you had better explain.
Please sit down, everyone.
Everyone sits but Mr. Green. He searches for a spot, but each seat is taken by someone just as he tries to sit in it. He ends up leaning against the beverage table.
When I said that I was Mr. Buddy's butler, this was both true and misleading. I was once his butler, but it was not his untimely death this evening that brought my employment with him to an end.
Did it come to an end?
When my wife decided to end her life, she too was being blackmailed by this odious man who now lies dead before us. He hated my wife for the same reason that he hated all of you. He believed that you were all thoroughly un-American.
Mr. Green's serving table gives way, landing him and several pieces of crystal on the floor.
Sorry.
For some reason, he felt it was inappropriate for a senator to have a corrupt wife or a doctor to take advantage of his patients for a wife to emasculate her husband and so forth.
This is ridiculous. If he's such a patriotic American, why didn't he report us to the authorities?
He decided to put his information to good use and make a little money out of it. What could be more American than that?
What was your role in all this?
I was a victim too. At least my wife was. She had friends who were socialists.
Several guests gasped, the most vocal of whom is Mrs. Peacock.
Well, we all make mistakes.
Mrs. White pulls a tissue from her bra and gives it to him.
But Mr. Buddy threatened to give my wife's name to the House Un-American Activities Committee unless she named them. She refused, and so he blackmailed her. We had no money, and the price of his silence was that we worked for him for nothing. We were slaves. Well, to make a long story short,
Too late.
the suicide of my wife preyed on my mind and created a sense of injustice in me. I resolved to put Mr. Buddy behind bars. It seemed the best way to do it, and free all of you from the same burden of blackmail, was to get everyone face to face, confront Mr. Buddy with his crimes, and then turn him over to the police.
So everything is explained.
Nothing's explained. We still don't know who killed him.
Well, the point is, we've got to find out in the next 39 minutes before the police arrive.
My God, we can't have them come here now.
How can we possibly find out which one of you did it?
What do you mean, which one of you did it?
Well, I didn't do it.
Well, one of us did. We all had the opportunity. We all had a motive.
Great. We'll all go to the chair.
Maybe it wasn't one of us.
Well, who else could it have been?
Who else is in the house?
Well, is the cook?
Look,
Cook.
Party runs from the study to the kitchen. From inside the kitchen, we see they all stop near the door except for Mr. Green. He steps down into the kitchen and looks, stopping just in front of the freezer.
Well, she's not here.
The freezer door opens. Miss Scarlet screams. The cook's body tumbles out into Mr. Green's arms, the dagger sticking out of her back. Mrs. Ho was not and is not a light woman. He is having difficulty holding her.
Didn't do it. Somebody, please help me. Somebody, please help me.
Several guests go to help. Mrs. White reaches for the knife.
Don't touch it. That's evidence.
Not for us. We have to find out who did this. We can't take fingerprints.
I think you'd better explain yourself, Wadsworth.
Me? Why me?
Who would want to kill the cook?
Dinner wasn't that bad.
How can you make jokes at a time like this?
It's my defense mechanism.
Some defense. If I was the killer, I would kill you next.
Mrs. White and Mr. Green stare him down.
Oh,
There is a poignant and uncomfortable silence.
I said if. If. Hey, come on. There's only one admitted killer here, and it's certainly not me. It is her.
He points at Mrs. White.
I've admitted nothing.
Well, you paid the blackmail. How many husbands have you had?
Mine or other women's?
Yours.
5.
5?
Yes, just the 5. Husbands should be like Kleenex. Soft, strong, and disposable.
You lure men to their deaths like a spider with flies.
Flies are where men are most vulnerable.
Right. Well, if it wasn't you, then who was it? Who had the dagger anyway? It was you, Mrs. Peacock, wasn't it?
Yes, but I put it down
Where?
in the study.
When?
I don't know. Before I fainted, after I fainted, I don't know. But any of you could have picked it up.
Look, I suggest we take the cook's body into the study.
Why?
I'm the butler. I like to keep the kitchen tidy.
Heading back to the study. We face the door that leads from the study to the hall. The men are carrying the cook's body into the study, effectively blocking off the women's view.
Look.
He drops his portion of Mrs. Ho.
What?
The body's gone.
Mrs. Ho is dropped completely.
What are you all staring at?
Nothing.
Well, who's there?
Nobody.
Nobody. That's what we mean. Mr. Buddy's body, it's gone.
Maybe he wasn't dead.
He was.
we should have made sure.
How? By cutting his head off, I suppose.
That wasn't called for.
Where is he?
We better look for him.
They look around.
Well, he couldn't have been dead.
He was. At least I thought he was. But what difference does it make now?
It makes quite a difference to him. Maybe there is life after death.
Life after death is as improbable as sex after marriage.
Maybe Mr. Body killed the cook.
Yes!
Yes.
Ow.
Mr. Green is at a loss.
Well, if you excuse me, is there a little girl's room?
Oui, madame.
No, I just want to powder my nose. Thank you.
Mrs. Peacock steps over Mrs. Ho's corpse into the hall. Miss Scarlet picks a film strip off the desk, holding it in the air.
What's this, Wadsworth?
I'm afraid those are the negatives to which Colonel Mustard earlier referred.
Oh my God!
Were you planning to blackmail him, Wadsworth?
Certainly not. I'd obtained them for the Colonel and was going to give them back as soon as Mr. Buddy was unmasked.
Very pretty. Would you like to see these, Yvette? They might shock you.
No, merci, I am a lady.
Oh, how would you know what kind of pictures they are if you're such a lady?
What sort of pictures are they?
They are my pictures and I'd like them back, please.
No, I'm afraid there's something in them that concerns me too.
Professor Plum snatches the pictures and holds them up to the light.
Let me see.
Oh my. Nobody can get into that position.
For sure they can. Let me show you.
Plum lays her down on the couch to demonstrate.
Get off me.
At the end of the hall, Mrs. Peacock opens the door to the bathroom and screams. Mr. Body's body staggers out onto her, his arms outstretched, his head bloody. The party runs into the hall to help her.
Mr. Body!
He's attacking her!
They pull the corpse off of Mrs. Peacock.
Well, he's dead.
Mr. Body, dead again.
Oh my god.
Oh, she's going to faint.
Somebody catch her!
Wadsworth rushes behind Mrs. Peacock, encircling her with his arms.
I'll catch you. Fall into my arms.
She sighs and slips right through his arms.
You've
Sorry.
got blood on your hands.
I didn't do it!
He pulls out his handkerchief again, wringing his hands.
He's got no injuries.
He picks up Mr. Body's arm and drops it again.
Well, certainly dead now. Why would anyone want to kill him twice?
It seems so unnecessary.
It's what we call overkill.
What we call psychotic.
Unless he wasn't dead before.
What's the difference?
That's what we're trying to find out. We're trying to find out who killed him and where and with what.
There's no need to shout!
I'm not shouting. All right? I am. I'm shouting. I'm shouting. I'm shout.
At which point the candlestick, which had been nestled above the bathroom door, falls and hits him on the head. Wadsworth drops to the floor. Returning to the study, Mrs. Peacock has evidently recovered somewhat, but apparently not enough to help the other women take the heavier Mrs. Ho into the room. They drop her on the floor with a groan. The men, of course, carry the lighter Mr. Body. Colonel Mustard begins issuing orders.
Okay, put the corpses on the sofa. Ladies first.
Professor Plum groans as he helps them. Miss Scarlet lets out a raspy grunt. Mrs. White letting out the occasional whimper. They plop Mrs. Ho on the sofa. Wadsworth enters, holding ice to his head.
Careful, don't get blood on the sofa.
How do we do this? This dagger will go further in her back.
Hip her forward, over the arm.
They do so.
Now, Mr. Body.
All three men grunt and groan, getting Mr. Body quickly up on the couch next to Mrs. Ho, pinning Professor Plum on the couch between the two corpses. Rather than move, he makes himself comfortable, using the slumped-over cook's rump as an armrest.
Now who
Mr. Body's eyes stare up at him. He quickly closes them.
had access to the candlestick?
All of us.
It was given to you.
Yeah, but I dropped it on the table. Anyone could have picked it up. You, him.
Look, we still have all these weapons.
Wadsworth walks the room, collecting the weapons.
The gun, the wrench, the lead pipe. Let's put them all in this cupboard and lock it. There's a homicidal maniac about.
He places and locks the weapons in the cupboard.
Good idea.
Good idea.
Good idea.
Good idea.
Wadsworth begins tucking the key away.
What are you doing with the key?
Putting it in my pocket?
Why?
Well, to keep it safe, obviously.
That means you can open it whenever you want.
But it also means you can't.
But what if you're the murderer?
I'm not.
But what if you are?
Well, it's got to be put somewhere. If I've got it, I know that I'm safe.
But we don't know that we are.
I've an idea. We'll throw it away.
One by one, they all run into the hall.
Good idea.
Good idea.
Wonderful, right away.
Brilliant.
That'll do it.
They run into the foyer. Wadsworth opens the door, raising his arm to throw the key out. Waiting outside the door is a man who ducks, thinking Wadsworth is about to strike him. The butler quickly recovers and pockets the key. The rest of the party runs up behind him.
Sorry. Sorry. Can we help?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb the whole household, but my car broke down out here, and I was wondering if I could use your phone.
Just a moment, please.
The party huddles together and discusses it. The motorist looks rather confused. After a few moments, the group returns to the motorist.
Very well, sir. Would you care to come in?
Well, where is it?
What, the body?
The phone? What body?
Well, there's nobody. There's nobody. There's nobody in the study.
No.
No.
Oh.
But I think there's a phone in the lounge.
Thank you.
Wadsworth closes the front door and leads the motorist to the lounge, pointing out the phone.
When you finished your call, perhaps you would be good enough to wait here.
Certainly.
Wadsworth exits the lounge and closes the door. Inside, the motorist reaches for the phone as he sees and hears the door being locked. Interior ground floor of the hall. As Wadsworth locks the lounge door, Colonel Mustard walks behind him and puts a hand on his shoulder. Wadsworth yells in fright and spins around to face him.
Where's the key?
In my pocket.
Not that key. The key to the cupboard with the weapons.
Do you still wish me to throw it away?
Yes.
Yes.
Wadsworth steps out onto the
Yes.
porch, takes the key from his pocket, and throws it. We see it land on the cement and bounce into the foliage. He closes the door and walks into the hall.
Well, what now?
Wadsworth, let me out.
No.
Why not?
We've got to know who did it. We're all in this together now.
If you leave, I'll say that you killed them both.
Me too.
So will I.
Mrs. White pulls Wadsworth by the tie.
Oh, Wadsworth, I'll make you sorry you ever started this. One day, when we're alone together.
Mrs. White, no man in his right mind would be alone together with you.
Well, I could use a drink.
So could
Okay.
I.
Colonel Mustard goes to the study and looks in.
Just checking.
Everything all right?
Yep, 2 corpses. Everything's fine.
Cut to the library. Colonel Mustard is pouring himself a tall glass of whiskey.
Anybody else want a whiskey?
Yeah.
Colonel Mustard pours haplessly into 3 other glasses at once, spilling the whiskey all over the table.
All right, look, pay attention, everybody. Wadsworth, am I right in thinking that there is nobody else in this house?
No.
Then there is someone else in this house.
No, sorry, I said no, meaning yes.
No meaning yes? Look, I want a straight answer. Is there someone else or isn't there? Yes or no?
No.
No, there is or no, there isn't.
Yes.
Mrs. White breaks her glass against the fireplace.
Please! Don't you think we should get this man out of the house before he finds out what's going on here?
She tosses the remains of her glass into the air. It shatters on the hearth.
Yeah.
How can we throw him outside in this weather?
If we let him stay in the house, he may get suspicious.
Well, if we throw him out, he may get even more suspicious.
If I were him, I'd be suspicious already.
Oh, who cares? The guy doesn't matter. Let him stay. Locked up for another half an hour. The police will be here by then, and there are 2 dead bodies in the study.
Shh.
Well, there is still some confusion as to whether or not there's anybody else in this house.
I told you there isn't.
There isn't any confusion or there isn't anybody else.
Either or both.
Just give me a clear answer.
Certainly. So what was the question?
Is there anybody else in the house?
No.
That's what he says. But does he know? I suggest we handle this in proper military fashion. We split up and search the house.
Split up?
Yes, we have very little time left, so we'll split up into pairs.
Pairs?
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute. Suppose that one of us is the murderer. If we split up into pairs, whichever one is left with the killer might get killed.
Then we would have discovered who the murderer is.
But the other half of the pair would be dead.
This is war, Peacock. Casualties are inevitable. You cannot make an omelet without breaking eggs. Every good cook will tell you that.
But look what happened to the cook.
Colonel Mustard raises his eyebrows. She makes a fair point.
Colonel, are you willing to take that chance?
What choice have we?
None.
I suppose you're right.
Oh, bon d'accord, but it's dark upstairs and I'm frightened of the dark. Will anyone go with me?
I will.
I will.
Oh, thank you.
Light pause.
I suggest we draw lots for partners.
He takes long matchsticks from near the fireplace. Cut to the kitchen. Wadsworth uses a knife to cut the long matchsticks into matching pairs, each pair a different length. He collects them in his hand, adjusting them so that the match's lengths can't be seen.
All right, ready? The two shortest together, the next two shortest together. Agreed? And I suggest the two shortest search the cellar, and so on up.
The party approach the butler to pull their lots. As each steps forward to draw, we see the others begin to find their matching length. After everyone else has a match, Wadsworth takes what is left. The full group continues to compare matchsticks until each finds their partner and assigned location in the following order. Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard have drawn the ground floor. Mrs. White and Wadsworth, the second floor, Yvette and Mr. Green the attic, and finally Professor Plum and Mrs. Peacock taking to the cellar. Plum drops his matchstick dramatically.
It's you and me, honey bunch.
Oh, God.
Party re-enters the hall and begins to split. Wadsworth and Mrs. White start up the stairs, as do Mr. Green and Yvette. Professor Plum and Mrs. Peacock stop, unsure of where to go. Wadsworth pauses on a step and points to a door under the staircase.
The cellar?
Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet stop in the middle of the hall.
Well, we know what's in the study. We've just come from the library, and the stranger's locked up in the lounge.
Let's go look in the billiard room again.
They exit to the billiard room. Professor Plum opens the door to the cellar. Miss Peacock reaches in and turns on the light. They enter cautiously. Cut to the second floor hallway. The storm rages on outside. Thunder rumbles and lightning flashes, visible from a second-story window. Wadsworth and Mrs. White walk down the hallway as Mr. Green and Yvette start climbing the stairs to the attic. Cut up to the attic. All that is visible are two silhouettes, backlit in a doorway, surrounded completely in darkness. Suddenly, the light turns on. We see Mr. Green and Yvette at the bottom of the attic staircase. Both of them are terrified of what may be above them. They stand in silence.
Do you want to go up in front of me?
Absolutely no.
I'm sure there's no one up there.
Then you go up front.
All right.
Neither move. The sound of the rain tatters in the background as they stand frozen. Cut to the cellar. Again, darkness. This time, we see Mrs. Peacock and Professor Plum backlit as they attempt to edge down the cellar stairs. Mrs. Peacock gasps at the sight of the unlit cellar below.
Well, ladies first.
No, you can go first.
No. I insist.
No, I insist.
Well, what are you afraid of? A fate worse than death?
No, just death. Isn't that enough?
Back in the second floor hallway, Mrs. White and Wadsworth stand in front of the doors of two adjacent rooms. A grandfather clock sits between them. They turn to face each other, both looking at the other nervously.
Are you going in there?
Yes. Are you?
Yes.
They pause.
Right.
Right.
They look in.
I don't see any light switches in there.
Well, neither do I, but the switches must be somewhere.
Shall I come in with you?
No. I mean, no. No, thank you.
They step into their respective rooms, jumping back into the hall simultaneously, hoping to catch the other red-handed somehow. Cut to the billiard room. Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet are crouched behind the corner bar. They stand and Colonel Mustard indicates the bar's narrow egress.
Ladies first.
No thanks.
They both attempt to leave the bar, having to squeeze through sideways. It's a very tight fit. Colonel Mustard walks past Miss Scarlet and grabs a pool cue from the wall. She gasps quietly and throws her arms in front of her defensively. He gently claps the cue into his other hand as he walks over to the pool table, finally motioning with the stick to look under it. We crouch down with them. There's nothing there. Cut back to the attic. Mr. Green and Yvette are where we left them. At the bottom of the steps, neither seem to have moved a muscle. The sound of rain continues to fill the silence.
Go on. I'll be right behind you.
That's why I'm nervous.
Then we go together.
The two squeeze up the narrow steps side by side. Back in the cellar, Mrs. Peacock and Professor Plum are still inching down the stairs. Mrs. Peacock turns on the lights as Professor Plum slips on a step. She runs down the remaining few stairs, frightened.
Stay there.
Quick to the foyer. Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet throw open the closet next to the front door. Empty. Cut back to the second floor master bedroom. Wadsworth wanders around in the dark.
If anyone's in here, just look out.
Cut to the opposite second floor bedroom. Mrs. White walks slowly through the dark.
Are you hiding? I'm coming.
Now in the ballroom, Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet open the ballroom door, backlit by the hallway behind them.
Room's this?
Search me.
All right.
He starts to frisk her.
Get your mitts off me.
He does. Down in the cellar, Mrs. Peacock sees a rat and screams, flailing her hands to snag a cobweb. The rat crawls away. Professor Plum is visibly tense as he begins to look around. Up in the ballroom, Colonel Mustard flips on the lights, making Miss Scarlet gasp.
Nobody here.
Unless he's behind one of those curtains.
She points to the curtains at the far end of the ballroom.
You look. I'll go search the kitchen.
Colonel Mustard leaves. Miss Scarlet sighs. She walks slowly towards the curtains. The curtains seem to be moving, but so subtly it could just be her imagination. But then, there is a bold, definitive movement in the right curtain. Miss Scarlet stops in her tracks, trying to scream but unable to. She continues cautiously. Reaching the curtains in question, she pauses and throws them back.
Aha!
Revealing a broken window and a strong wind blowing through it.
Exterior, roadside, still raining. We see the motorist's car on the side of the road. A cop car pulls up to investigate. Close up on the desk in the study, we see photographs and papers, as well as the tapes of the conversation Yvette was making, all resting on the envelope Wadsworth held earlier. A gloved hand picks them up, throwing them into the fire. It all burns. The hand now uses a key to unlock the study cupboard, revealing the confiscated weapons. Cut to the motorist's car, interior then exterior. We see a cop shining his flashlight into the car. Cut back to the lounge. We see the motorist making his phone call.
I'm a little nervous.
The camera reveals the lounge's fireplace, which slowly swivels open, revealing a secret passageway.
I'm in this big house and I've been locked into the lounge. Yes.
As the motorist continues, we see the wrench closing in on him.
The funny thing is there's this whole group of people and they're having some sort of party. One of them is my old boss from...
The wrench comes down with a heavy thud. The phone falls to the floor, then the motorist follows suit. A gloved hand places the phone back on its cradle. Exterior, roadside. The cop shines his flashlight on the car's license plate, then underneath the car. He walks away. Cutting to the conservatory, we find Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet standing in the doorway, backlit by the hall. Rain still raps at the glass, but no thunder or lightning. Colonel Mustard switches on the lights. The two start looking around. Miss Scarlet walks to the outer wall of windows. Colonel Mustard walks to the far brick wall, touching one of the many gardening tools lining the shelves. He then takes a rag and wipes his hands off. While doing so, he leans against the wall, which swings open, sending him tumbling to the ground. He recovers quickly.
It's like a secret passage.
Should we see where it leads?
Colonel Mustard picks up a large flashlight off the shelf, turning it on.
What the hell? I'll go first. I've had a good life.
They enter the secret passage. It is narrow and the floor is uneven. Miss Scarlet trips and yells in surprise.
Oh, God.
It's all right.
From the lounge, we see Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet emerge from behind the still rotated fireplace, finding the motorist's corpse.
Oh, my God.
The fireplace swings shut behind them. Scarlet panics and starts screaming, catching the attention of Mr. Green and Yvette in the attic. Scarlet and Mustard run to the lounge's double doors, which they find are both locked. They start shouting and pounding on the doors.
Oh, come on! In here!
On the second floor, Wadsworth and Mrs. White run for the staircase, colliding into Mr. Green and Yvette, who have just run down from the attic, sending everyone into a pile on the floor. Back in the lounge, Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard are still banging at the door and screaming.
Help! Down here, down here!
We watch the four upstairs untangle themselves. Wadsworth and Mr. Green run down the stairs, followed by Yvette and Mrs. White.
Get us out of here, please!
Where's it coming from?
Where are we going?
They return to the main floor just as Professor Plum and Miss Peacock emerge from the cellar.
Where are they?
The lounge.
Wadsworth tries the door.
Door's locked.
I know.
Then unlock it.
Where's the key?
Wadsworth searches his pockets.
The key is gone.
Well, never mind about the key. Unlock the door.
Mr. Green grabs Professor Plum by the lapels and shakes him.
I can't unlock the door without the key.
Green releases the professor and bangs on the door. We cut between the two sides of the door.
Let us in. Let us in.
Let us out!
Let us out!
It's no good. Stand back.
He backs up all the way across the hall to the study door.
There's no alternative. I'm just going to have to break it down.
Running at full speed, he hits the lounge doors and falls to the floor, holding his shoulder and grunting.
Ugh.
I know, I have it.
She runs into the study. We see the two in the lounge are still yelling, still pounding on the door.
Will you shut up?
Yvette runs out of the study and trips over the sprawled out Wadsworth, accidentally shooting the closest chandelier rope. Mr. Green and Professor Plum hit the deck. The chandelier starts spinning. Mrs. Peacock and Mrs. White run into each other. In the lounge, Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard crouch to the ground against the doors.
They're shooting at us.
Back in the hall, the chandelier continues to spin and the rope is fraying, unbeknownst to the party below. Yvette stands and aims at the lounge door locks. Plum and Green hit the floor again at the sight of the gun. Yvette fires twice, both shots hit the locks. In the lounge, Colonel Mustard turns away from the door, holding his shoulder.
Oh, I've been shot. I've been shot.
Back in the hall, Yvette lowers the gun so it's carelessly pointing it down at Professor Plum and Mr. Green. They scramble out of the way.
Come out, the door is open.
The lounge door opens and a dramatic but unwounded Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet emerge. Mustard walks towards Yvette.
Why are you shooting that thing at us?
Directly above them, the chandelier spins.
To get you out.
He shoves her back, leaving him alone beneath the chandelier.
You know you could have killed us? I could have been killed!
The chandelier spins increasingly faster. Its rope is almost completely frayed. He takes a step dramatically forward.
I can't take any more scares!
The rope snaps. The chandelier lands directly behind Colonel Mustard. He cries out in shock, collapsing to a nearby padded bench.
Look!
The party runs across the room, crushing glass as they go.
Which one of you did it?
We found him together.
How did you get in?
It was locked.
It's a great trick.
There's a secret passageway from the conservatory.
Is that the same gun?
From the cupboard?
But it was locked.
No, it was unlocked.
Unlocked?
But yes, see for yourself.
The party runs for the lounge. As they cross the hall, Yvette tosses the revolver to the ground. It lands under the broken chandelier. The guests pile into the study and see that the cupboard has indeed been opened.
How did you know it was unlocked? How did you know you could get at the gun?
I didn't. I think I will break it open, but it was open already.
A likely story.
The doorbell rings. The guests freeze in place.
Maybe they'll just go away.
We cut to the doorbell. It has stopped ringing and sits still. Cut back to the guests, still frozen, waiting with bated breath. The doorbell rings again. Intercut with a shot, the guests sigh in frustration.
I'm going to open it.
Why?
I have nothing to hide. I didn't do it.
He holds his hand out to Wadsworth.
The key.
Wadsworth hands the key to Mr. Green.
Thank you.
Mr. Green strides into the hall, followed by the rest of the party. He opens the door, revealing the cop.
Good evening, sir.
Mr. Green swings the door shut, shocked by the sight of the cop. He quickly reopens the door.
Yes.
I found an abandoned car down near the gates of this house. Did the driver come in here for any help by chance?
No.
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 Well, actually, yes.
No.
Oh.
No.
There seems to be some kind of disagreement.
Everyone but Mr. Green again disagrees.
Oh.
Yes.
No.
Can I come in and use your phone?
Wadsworth steps up to the front door.
Of course you may, sir. You may use the one in the... No. You could use the one in the... No. Would you be kind enough to wait in the library?
Sure.
Entering the house, the cop sees Yvette.
Don't I know you from someplace?
The maid shrugs.
You all seem to be very anxious about something.
It's the chandelier. Fell down. Almost killed us. Would you like to come this way, please, sir?
Miss Scarlet abruptly closes the door to the study and stands in the doorway, looking nonchalant. The cop spins toward the sound. Professor Plum does the same to the lounge door. The cop spins again. There's a momentary silence before Wadsworth intervenes.
Frightfully drafty, these old houses.
Wadsworth leads the cop into the library, showing him to the phone.
Please help yourself to a drink if you'd like. Not the cognac, just in case.
The butler exits and closes the door.
Just in case. What?
Back in the hall, Wadsworth locks the door and turns to the assembled guests. We hear the cop trying to open the locked door.
We should have told him.
Oh, very well for you to say that now.
I said it then.
Oh, shut
up!
Wadsworth gestures to the shattered chandelier.
Let's clean this up.
Back in the library, the cop pauses at the door, then walks over to the phone. He reaches for it, but it rings before he picks it up. He answers the phone.
Hello?
The party stands still at the sound of the ringing phone.
Maybe the cop answered it.
We cut back to the cop.
And who should I say is calling? Ah. Will you hold on, please?
The cop walks over and pounds on the library doors.
Let me out of here. Let me out of here. You have no right to shut me in. I'll book you for false arrest and wrongful imprisonment, and then obstructing an officer in the course of his duty, and murder.
The door suddenly opens, revealing the party, Wadsworth with broom in hand.
What do you mean, murder?
I just said it so you'd open the door.
The guests sigh and laugh nervously.
What's going on around here, and why would you lock me in? Why are you receiving phone calls from J. Edgar Hoover?
J. Edgar Hoover?
That's right. The head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
Why is J. Edgar Hoover on your phone?
I don't know. He's on everyone else's. Why should he be on mine? Excuse me.
Wadsworth enters the library, closing and locking the door.
What's going on here?
Miss Scarlet places her hands gently on his chest and shoulder, attempting to ease suspicion.
We're having a party.
The guests laugh even more nervously than before.
Mind if I look around?
Sure.
She pauses, turning to the rest of the group.
You can show him around, Mr. Green.
Me?
Yes, you can show him the dining room, the kitchen, the ballroom.
Fine. Fine, officer. Come with me. I'll show you the dining room, or the kitchen, or the ballroom.
From the kitchen, we see the cop raise the metal partition in the dining room and look in. Now in the lounge, Plum, Peacock, White, Mustard, and Scarlet stand over the two corpses.
Make it look convincing.
We bounce between them and Mr. Green with the cop.
So this is the dining room.
No kidding.
Come on.
Cut to the dining room.
What's going on in these two rooms?
He points back out toward the hall.
Which two rooms?
The cop pushes past him towards the hall. Scarlet and Plum scramble across the hall to the study. Just as the door slams shut, the cop enters and points at both the lounge and the study.
Those two rooms.
Oh, those two rooms.
Yes.
Mr. Green is at a loss. The cop strides toward the study door. Mr. Green blocks his path.
Officer, I don't think you should go in there.
Why not?
The cop walks around him. Mr. Green throws himself in front of the door to the study.
Because it's all too shocking.
The cop throws Mr. Green aside. We cut to the study. The lights are out. Life Could Be a Dream plays on a record in the background. The cop enters, turning on the lights. We find Mrs. White on a couch on top of Mr. Body, seemingly making out. The camera shifts and we see her using her moving arm against him to sell the ruse. The cop turns his gaze from the couch and sees Colonel Mustard and a woman apparently kissing against the far wall in a curtain. A quick zoom in shows the colonel holding Mrs. Ho's eyes open. The camera cuts to the side of the curtains, revealing Mrs. Peacock behind the curtain. Her hands are on Colonel Mustard's back, Mrs. Ho propped up between them.
It's not all that shocking. These folks are just having a good time.
The cop leaves to the hall. Mr. Green freezes momentarily, absolutely stunned. He stumbles backwards into the hall, closing the door behind him. Over in the lounge, we see the motorist propped up in a chair. Miss Scarlet pours a drink into his mouth, sticking the bottle of booze in his hands. The music continues to play in the background, audible in the other rooms. Back in the study, Colonel Mustard and Mrs. Peacock roll Mrs. Ho onto the couch.
Oh my God.
As the door swings open to the lounge, Professor Plum takes Miss Scarlet onto the couch and begins kissing her. She plays along. The cop enters.
Excuse me?
The two lovers turn over, startled. The cop notices the motorist. He leans into the dead man's face and sniffs.
This man's drunk. Dead drunk.
Head right.
You're not going to drive home, are you?
He won't be driving home, officer. I promise you that.
No.
Someone will give him a lift, huh?
Oh, we'll get him a car.
A long black car.
Miss Scarlet slugs him. He bites his thumb.
A limousine.
Professor Plum again lowers Miss Scarlet to the couch. She gives a little cry of surprise.
Oh!
Heading back to the hall, Wadsworth exits the library and leans against the door. He sighs, deep in thought. The cop and Mr. Green re-enter the hall. Wadsworth quickly smiles and walks to them both, broom still in hand.
Officer.
You're too late. I've seen it all.
You have? I can explain everything.
You don't have to.
I don't.
Mr. Green shakes his head, wide-eyed, smiling in assurance.
Don't worry. There's nothing illegal about any of this.
Are you sure?
Of course. This is America.
I see.
The cop slaps Wadsworth on the shoulder.
It's a free country. Don't you know that?
I didn't know it was that free.
The cop glances back at Mr. Green, trying his best to look innocent.
May I use your phone now?
Certainly.
Butler leads the cop to the library once again and locks it. The guests start to emerge into the hall.
Why did you lock him in again?
We haven't finished searching the house yet.
Well, we're running out of time. Only 15 minutes before the police come.
The police have already came!
Shut up!
Let's get on with it.
Monsieur?
The guests again split up to search the house as the music continues. We cut to Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet entering the kitchen, splitting to opposite sides of the room. Spotting a floor-length cabinet, Mustard cautiously approaches it. He swings the door open, leaning in. An ironing board immediately hits him on the head. Miss Scarlet examines the inside of the freezer. She swings one of the meat hooks, and the back of the freezer swings open, revealing another secret passage. She cries out in surprise.
Oh! Look! I can't believe it. I wonder where this one goes.
Well, let's find out.
Okay.
They step in. We cut immediately to the lounge. The music continues to play. A large floor-length framed portrait on the wall swivels open. Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet step through, entering the room from the secret passage. Unlike the fireplace, the portrait swings shut instantly. They shrug.
Let's try the ballroom again.
Back in the attic, Mr. Green and Yvette are still poking around. Abruptly, we cut away to a gloved hand throwing down a lever. The electricity in the whole house is cut off. The lights go out instantly. The music stops. Down in the cellar, Professor Plum lights a match in the dark. Around the corner, further in the dark, Mrs. Peacock backs up into the boiler, jumping forward. Thinking she's bumped into someone, she hits it repeatedly with her handbag.
Ah, don't you touch me!
Professor Plum's match burns down to his fingers. He gasps, dropping the dead man. Upstairs in the master bedroom, a gust of wind blows in, slamming the door shut behind Wadsworth. He screams in fright.
Oh,
In the adjacent bedroom, the same wind throws a window open next to Mrs. White, and she too screams. As Mrs. White continues to scream, we cut back to the main staircase. The vet descends the stairs quietly. Mrs. White continues to scream in the distance. In the library, we see the cop is on the phone.
Hello? Hello?
The vet enters an unknown room. It's almost complete darkness. We're barely able to make out Yvette's silhouette. Someone off-screen begins talking. Neither distinctly male or female, the voice seems to shift slightly as it speaks.
shut the door. Did anyone recognize you?
Suddenly, Yvette's French accent is gone as she steps closer into the light.
They must have, but not just my face. They know every inch of my body, and they're not the only ones.
A noose drops onto Yvette's neck.
It's you!
She gasps louder as her body drops. Back in the dark library, the cop is still on the phone.
There's something funny going on around here. I don't know what it is.
The camera closes in on the door handle being silently opened.
No, I'm not on duty, but I have a feeling that I'm in danger. You know the big ugly house on top?
The lead pipe presses down softly on the phone cradle, cutting the connection off, then slowly raises behind the cop's head.
Hello? Hello, are you there?
The camera cuts instantly to the doorbell ringing, then close up one by one on each of the remaining guests, all in the dark with a single streak of light flashing across their faces, before we cut now back to the front door. In the dark, the front door opens. A woman is outside dressed in a sort of bellhop uniform, and she strikes a pose and taps her shoes as the door comes to a rest.
Da 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 da, I am your singing telegram.
The gun fires. She falls to the ground. The door immediately slams shut. Cut back upstairs, Mr. Green tries to find his way out of the attic and opens a closet. Its contents fall on him. A jack-in-the-box then springs open, frightening Mrs. White. She screams. The camera jumps to the master bedroom. Wadsworth hears her cries for help.
I'm coming. Just trying to find the door.
Wadsworth enters another part of the master bedroom.
Help me! Help me! In here! Help, please!
Coming.
He feels around in the dark and grasps a round knob.
What's this? Another door?
He twists the handle. Turning on the shower head we now see is directly above him. We cut to the staircase to find a very wet Wadsworth sloshing down the steps. He goes to the entrance to the cellar and pulls up the lever we saw before, restoring electricity to the house. In the study, the record player starts again, taking several seconds to get up to speed. Back in hall, the party, minus Yvette, slowly reassembles. The song comes to an end. The guests step into the billiard room. We cut into the billiard room, where they find Yvette's corpse sprawled on the pool table, her hands wrapped around the noose still on her neck. Just as the last of them enters, they all walk out. We cut similarly into the library, the guests looking in from the hall. They see the cop's corpse hung over the whiskey table. The group steps just inside the doorway.
2 murders.
Professor Plum walks over to the cop, leaning down and picking up the lead pipe.
Either of them shot. I thought I heard a gun.
I did.
So did I.
I thought I heard the front door slam.
Oh, God. The murderer must have run out.
They all run toward the front door. Outside on the porch, the singing telegram girl's body lays across the doorway. The door opens and they stare down at her from inside the house.
3 murders.
6 altogether.
This is getting serious.
They close the door and lock it. Walking back into the main hall, Wadsworth notices.
No gun. Yvette dropped it here. Very well. I know who did it.
You do?
And furthermore, I'm going to tell you how it was all done. Follow me.
He walks to the library. The rest follow. Wadsworth addresses the assembled guests in the library.
Here we go. In order to help you understand what happened, I shall need to take you through the events of the evening step by step. At the start of the evening, Yvette was here by herself, waiting to offer you a glass of champagne. I was in the hall. I know, because I was there. Then I hurried across to the kitchen.
He waves for the guests to follow him. Now in the kitchen, he continues.
And the cook was in here, alive, sharpening knives, preparing for dinner, and then...
He runs out of the kitchen again. In the hall, Wadsworth springs up to the front door, the guests following closely. He proceeds to act out events.
And then the doorbell rang, and it was you.
He points to Colonel Mustard.
Yes.
I asked you for your coat, and I recognized you as Colonel Mustard and prevented you from telling me your real name because I didn't want any of you to use any name other than your pseudonym, and I introduced myself to you as the butler, and I ran across the hall to the library.
He does so with the confused guests in tow. Now in the library, Wadsworth begins to mime everything he describes.
And then Yvette met you and smiled. And poured you a drink.
He runs back into the hall to the front door.
And the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. White, looking pale and tragic, and I took her coat and made off.
The group, only half out of the library, duck back inside as Wadsworth enters again.
And I introduced Mrs. White to Colonel Mustard. Hello. Hello. And I noticed that Mrs. White and Yvette flinched. Then there was a rumble of thunder and a crash of lightning.
He demonstrates.
And to make a long story short...
Too late.
Too late.
One by one, you all arrived.
Wadsworth runs into the hall.
And then the gong was struck again, but was struck by the cook.
Takes the mallet and strikes the gong.
And we went into the dining room.
They all run into the dining room. Wadsworth goes around the table, indicating chairs.
And Mrs. Peacock sat here, and Professor Plum sat here, and Mrs. White sat here, and Mr. Green, Miss Scarlet, Colonel Mustard. This chair was vacant.
He points out the head chair again.
Anyway, we all revealed we'd received a letter.
He points at all the guests.
And you had a letter, 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 and you had a letter.
Get on with it.
The point is blackmail.
This didn't come out until after dinner in the study.
You're right.
They all run across the hall to the study. The butler rushes around the room, pointing at different locations.
Mr. Green stood here, Mrs. Peacock here, Miss Scarlet here, and Professor Plum here, and Colonel Mustard here, and Mrs. White here, and...
Get on
with it.
I'm getting there. And Mr. Body went to get a surprise package from the hall. And you all opened your presents.
He shuts the door.
And Mr. Body switched out the lights.
He clicks the switch. The lights go out.
Ah!
Mrs. Peacock flips the lights back on. Wadsworth is lying on the floor, and the guests are all deeply inconvenienced by the sight of another body on the floor.
Oh, grand.
The butler shoves himself up off the ground.
Mr. Body lay on the floor, apparently dead.
Was dead. I examined him.
Then why was he bashed on the head a few minutes later with a candlestick if he was dead already?
All right, I made a mistake.
Right. But if so, why was Mr. Buddy pretending to be dead? It could only be because he realized his scheme had misfired, and the gunshot was intended to kill him, not me. Look!
He walks over to Mr. Body's corpse, holding out his bloody ear.
The bullet grazed his ear. Clearly, his best way of escaping death was to pretend to be dead already.
So whoever grabbed the gun from me in the dark was trying to kill him.
But remember what happened next?
He goes to the door, picking up the cognac glass from the table.
Mrs. Peacock, you took a drink. You said, maybe it's poisoned. She screams, oh! Oh!
Starts physically nudging Mrs. Peacock over to sit her on the couch. As they move, she starts to scream.
Oh! Mr. Green.
He then reenacts the slap from earlier by slapping her once again. It works again.
Well, I had to stop her screaming. Oh! Then more screaming. Yvette, the billiard room. We all rushed out.
They rush into the billiard room. Wadsworth leans against the pool table. The guests pool around the door.
But one of us wasn't here. No.
No.
you?
No. Maybe one of us was murdering the cook, who wasn't here with us.
The guests pause.
Do you know?
I do.
He runs down the hall into the study, continuing his speech as he goes. The guests stop just outside the billiard room doors.
While we stood here trying to stop Yvette from panicking, one of us could have stayed in the study, picked up the dagger.
Now in the study, he takes the dagger from the desk and returns to the hall, running past the guests, dagger in hand, up in the air.
Run down the hall.
He runs into the kitchen freezer, raising the dagger back,
and stabbed the cook,
plunging it into a hanging cut of meat as the guests file in behind him.
Oh, how could he risk it? We might have seen him running back.
Not as they use this secret passageway.
Wadsworth goes over to the freezer and pushes open the back of the freezer. Mrs. Peacock gasps.
And the murderer ran back down the secret passageway to the study.
Wadsworth sprints out of the kitchen back to the study.
Is that where it comes out?
Yes, look.
Once again in the study, Wadsworth pushes open the picture.
What?
How did you know?
This house belongs to a friend of mine. I've known all along.
So you could be the murderer.
Don't be ridiculous. If I was the murderer, why would I reveal how I did it?
The guests nod.
Well, who else knew about the secret passage?
Miss Scarlet smacks Colonel Mustard's chest with the back of her hand.
We found it, Colonel Mustard and me.
You found it. You could have known about it all the time.
But I didn't.
Well, why would we believe you?
Because she was with us all in the billiard room doorway while Yvette was screaming. Don't you remember?
What I don't understand is, why was the cook murdered? She had nothing to do with Mr. Body.
Of course she did. I gathered you all here together because you were all implicated in Mr. Buddy's dastardly blackmail. Did none of you deduce the others were involved too?
Evidently, no one had.
What others?
The cook and Yvette.
No.
No.
That's how we got all his information. Before he could blackmail anyone, Mr. Buddy had to discover the guilty secret. The cook and Yvette were his accomplices.
I see. So whoever knew that the cook was involved killed her.
Yes.
Colonel Mustard looks very happy.
I know, because I was Mr. Buddy's butler, that the cook had worked for one of you.
Who?
He looks to Mrs. White.
You recognized Yvette, didn't you? Don't deny it.
What do you mean, don't deny it? I'm not denying anything.
Another denial.
All right, it's true. I knew Yvette. My husband had an affair with her, but I didn't care. I wasn't jealous.
Wadsworth now turns to Miss Scarlet.
You knew Yvette too, didn't you?
Yes, she worked for me.
Then he turns to face Colonel Mustard.
And you also knew her, sir. We've already established that you were one of Miss Scarlet's clients. That's why you were so desperate to get your hands on those negatives. Photographs of you and Yvette in flagrante delicto, remember?
Mr. Body threatened to send those pictures to my dear old mother. The shock would have killed her.
Oh, that would have been quite an achievement, since you told us that she's dead already.
She turns back to Wadsworth.
So, he had the motive.
You all had a motive.
But where and when was Mr. Body killed?
Don't you see?
He grabs Mr. Green.
Look, we came back into the study with Yvette. Mr. Buddy was on the floor.
Wadsworth trips Mr. Green to the floor, using him as Mr. Body.
Pretending to be dead, but one of us noticed he was alive.
He hoists Mr. Green back up on his feet, fast enough that Mr. Green stumbles back into a hard chair.
So I explained that I was Mr. Buddy's butler and that I invited you here, and we realized there was only one other person in the house.
The cook.
The cook!
The guests all run out of the study, Wadsworth darting the other way in the room. They all run into the kitchen. The guests enter. Mr. Green runs to the freezer just like he did before. He throws his finger in the air, ready to continue. He drops his hand, realizing the butler is missing.
Well, where is he?
The freezer door opens. Wadsworth, looking quite dead, starts to fall out. Mr. Green catches him, concerned, then exasperated, drops the butler on the floor. Wadsworth opens his eyes.
By now, she was dead. We laid her down with our backs to the freezer. One of us slipped through the same secret passage.
Again?
Of course, back to the study.
They all run out, less than enthusiastically. Back to the study.
The murderer was in the secret passage. Meanwhile, Mr. Body
Wadsworth again throws Mr. Green to the floor.
had been on the floor. He jumped up.
The butler picks up Mr. Green momentarily, then shoves him down again.
The murderer came out of the secret panel, picked up the candlestick.
He chases a genuinely panicked Mr. Green through the hall toward the bathroom, swinging his fist in the air as if he were holding the candlestick.
The murderer crept up behind him and killed him.
He brings his hand down upon Mr. Green's head. Mr. Green falls.
Will you stop that?
No.
The butler grabs Mr. Green, tossing him to the bathroom.
Then he threw him into the toilet.
No!
He closes the door, leans against it, and pretends to casually check his watch.
And nonchalantly rejoined us beside the cook's body in the kitchen. Took less than half a minute.
So who wasn't there the entire time in the kitchen?
Whoever it was is the murderer.
He runs off again down the hall. The bathroom door opens and Mr. Green emerges, drying his hands. We can hear a toilet flush. He hands the towel to Colonel Mustard. They all run into the study.
Excuse me. And we put the weapons in the cupboard, locked it, and ran to the front door.
They run into the hall yet again.
To throw the key away.
Wadsworth pushes past the guests, opens the front door, and throws his arms forward.
The motorist. I didn't throw the key away. I put it in my pocket. And someone could have taken it out of my pocket and substituted another.
We were all in a huddle. Any one of us could have done that.
Precisely.
He shuts the front door.
Wait a minute. Colonel Mustard has a top secret Pentagon job, and Mrs. White's husband is a nuclear physicist, and
He runs to the billiard room and points in.
that is the link between them.
What is your top secret job, Colonel?
I can tell you, he is working on the secret of the next fusion bomb.
Mrs. White gasps.
How did you know that?
Can you keep a secret?
Yes.
So can I.
Is this a plot between them, Wadsworth, or did Colonel Mustard do it alone?
We shall see. Let's look at the other murders.
Yes, bad luck that that motorist arrived at that moment.
It wasn't luck. I invited him.
You did?
Of course, it's obvious. Everyone here tonight was either Mr. Body's victim or accomplice. Everyone who has died gave him vital information about one of you. I got them here so they'd give evidence against him and force him to confess.
Oh, yeah? What about that motorist? What kind of information did he have?
He was my driver during the war.
Colonel Mustard sits in a chair.
And what was he holding over you?
He knew that I was a war profiteer. I stole essential Air Force radio parts and I sold them on the black market. That is how I made all my money. But that doesn't make me a murderer.
Well, a lot of our men died because their radios didn't work. Was the policeman working for Mr. Body too?
The cop was from Washington. He was on my payroll. I bribed him once a week so I could carry on with business. Mr. Body found out somehow.
Oh my God.
Oh, please.
And the singing telegram girl?
Outside the house, we see the front doors open. The rain has stopped. They look at the singing telegram girl's corpse.
She was my patient once. I had an affair with her. That's how I lost my license. Mr. Body found that out too.
Solemn pause.
Well, let's put her in the study with the others.
We cut to the study. Colonel Mustard, Professor Plum, and Mr. Green hold the telegram girl at shoulder height. They all nod and drop her carelessly and return to the hall.
So, now you all know why they died. Whoever killed Mr. Buddy also wanted his accomplices dead.
How did the murderer know about all of them? I mean, I admit that I guessed that this young singer informed on me to Mr. Body, but I didn't know anything about any of you until this evening.
First, the murderer needed to get the weapon. The weapons. Easy. He stole the key from my pocket. And then we all followed Colonel Mustard's suggestion that we split up and search the house.
That's right. It was Colonel Mustard's suggestion.
And one of us got away from his or her partner and hurried to the study.
He walks into the study and leans on the desk.
On the desk was the envelope from Mr. Buddy. It contained photographs and letters, the evidence of Mr. Buddy's network of informants.
Where's the envelope now?
Gone. Destroyed.
He looks around, then steps to the fireplace.
Perhaps in the fire? The only possible place.
He pulls out the remnants of the evidence from the fireplace.
Aha! Then, having found out the whole story, the murderer went to the cupboard, unlocked it with the key, took out the wrench.
Miss Scarlet runs out into the hall, pointing at the lounge.
Then we found the secret passage from the conservatory to the lounge, where we found the motorist dead.
Interior ground floor of the hall. Wadsworth frantically reenacts the scene.
That's right, and we couldn't get in. So Yvette ran to open the cupboard and shut the door open. Bang! And then the doorbell rang.
He points to the bell on the wall. To his shock, the doorbell rings. Everyone freezes in terror.
Oh, whoever it is, they gotta go away or they'll be killed. Oh.
Mrs. Peacock opens the front door. A rather elderly evangelist stands outside, pamphlets in hand.
Good evening. Have you ever given any thought to the kingdom of heaven?
What?
Repent. The kingdom of heaven is at hand.
You ain't just whistling Dixie.
Armageddon is almost upon us.
I got news for you. It's already here.
Mrs.
Go
Peacock
away.
waves him off. Sorry.
Go away.
But your souls are in danger.
Our lives are in danger, you beatnik.
She shuts the door on him, closing several of the pamphlets in the jam.
The cop arrived next. We locked him in the library. We forgot the cupboard with the weapons was now unlocked. Then we split up again.
He runs back to the entrance to the cellar.
And the murderer turned off the electricity.
He flips the switch. Everything goes black.
Oh my God.
Not again.
Turn on the lights.
Wadsworth turns on the lights.
Sorry, didn't mean to frighten you.
You're a bit late for that. I hate when he does that.
Then there were 3 more murders.
So which of us killed them?
None of us killed Mr. Buddy or the cook.
So who did?
The one person who wasn't with us.
The guests try to figure it out.
Yvette.
Yvette?
She was in the billiard room listening in on our conversation.
We flash back to Yvette sitting on the pool table. The following events transpire on screen as Wadsworth describes them.
She heard the gunshot. She thought he was dead. And while we examined the bullet hole, she crept into the study, picked up the dagger, ran to the kitchen, and stabbed the cook. We didn't hear the cook scream because Mrs. Peacock was screaming about the poison brandy. Then Yvette returned to the billiard room. She screamed, and we all ran to her.
We return back to the present in the hall.
Well, when did she kill Mr. Body?
When I said, we all ran to the kitchen to see the cook. Yvette hid in the study to check that Mr. Buddy was dead.
We flash back again to see Yvette hiding behind a chair in the lounge. Once again, Wadsworth narrates the events on screen.
He got up and followed them down the hall, so she hit him on the head with a candlestick and dragged him to the toilet.
Returning to the present in the hall, some of the guests seem lost.
Why?
To create confusion.
It worked.
Colonel Mustard nods, definitely confused.
Why did she do it?
Was it because she was acting under orders from the person who later killed her?
Who?
Who?
Wadsworth approaches Colonel Mustard.
Was it one of her clients?
Then Mrs. White.
Or was it a jealous wife?
Next, Professor Plum.
Or an adulterous doctor?
Turning finally to his last and actual suspect.
No, it was her employer, Miss Scarlet.
That's a lie.
Is it? You used her the way you always used her. You killed the motorist when we split up to search the house.
How could I have known about the secret passage?
Easy, Yvette told you. So when we split up again...
We cut to Miss Scarlet, gloved, flipping the switch at the top of the cellar stairs. Wadsworth narrates what plays out on screen.
You switched off the electricity. It was easy for you here on the ground floor. Then, in the dark, you got the lead pipe and the rope, strangled Yvette, ran to the library, killed the cop, picked up the gun where Yvette dropped it, opened the front door, recognized the singing telegram from her photograph, and shot her.
Cut back to the present.
You've no proof.
The gun is missing. Gentlemen, turn out your pockets. Ladies, empty your purses. Whoever has the gun is the murderer.
They all do so. Suddenly, Miss Scarlet pulls out the revolver. She points it to the group.
Brilliantly worked out, Wadsworth. I congratulate you.
He shrugs off the praise.
Me too.
Shut up!
Now, there's one thing I don't understand.
One thing.
Why did you do it? Half of Washington knows what business you run. You were in no real danger. The whole town would be implemented if you were exposed.
I don't think they know my real business. My business is secrets. Yvette found them out for me. The secrets of Senator Peacock's Defense Committee, of Colonel Mustard's fusion bomb, Professor Plum's UN contacts, and the work of your husband.
She walks to Mrs. White.
The nuclear physicist.
So it is political. You're a communist.
No, Mr. Green. Communism is just a red herring. Like all members of the oldest profession, I'm a capitalist. And I'm going to sell my secrets, your secrets, to the highest bidder.
What if we don't cooperate?
You will, or I'll expose you.
Oh, we could expose you. 6 murders?
I hardly think it will enhance your reputation at the UN, Professor Plum, if it's revealed that you have been implicated not only in adultery with one of your patients, but in her death, and the deaths of 5 other people.
You don't know what kind of people they have at the UN. I might go up in their estimation.
Colonel Mustard steps towards Miss Scarlet. She swings the revolver to point at him directly.
It is no good blackmailing me, madam. I have no more money.
Neither do I.
Why? Neither do I.
I know, sweetie pie, but you can pay me in government information. All of you.
He pauses, then walks to Wadsworth, pointing the revolver at him.
Except you, Wadsworth. You, as a mere butler, have no access to government secrets.
She cocks the gun.
So I'm afraid your moment has come.
Not so fast, Miss Scarlet. I do have a secret or two.
Oh yeah? Such as?
The game's up, Scarlet. There are no more bullets left in that gun.
Oh, come on. You don't think I'm going to fall for that old trick?
It's not a trick. There was 1 shot at Mr. Buddy in the study, 2 for the chandelier, 2 in the lounge, and 1 for the singing telegram. That's 6.
That's not 6.
1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1.
She thinks
There was only 1 shot that got in the chandelier. That's 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1.
Even if you're right, that would be 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1, not 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1.
Okay, fine. 1 plus 2 plus 1. Shut up! Point is, there's 1 bullet left in this gun, and guess who's going to get it?
the doorbell rings. Distracted, she lets her guard down. Wadsworth grabs her arm and spins around, taking the gun and forcing her to kneel on the floor. Mr. Green runs for the door and opens it. A dozen feds pour in. Mr. Green cowers by the closet in the foyer. Colonel Mustard raises his hands, smiling innocently.
I'm only a guest.
Wadsworth speaks to a passing cop.
Where's the chief?
The elderly evangelist, the chief, walks in, gun in hand.
Ah, Wadsworth, well done.
He holds his service pistol out, pointed at Miss Scarlet.
I did warn you, my dear. Mr. Hoover is an expert on Armageddon.
Scarlet is pulled to her feet. She pleads with Wadsworth.
Wadsworth, don't hate me for trying to shoot you.
Frankly, Scarlet, I don't give a damn. And as I was trying to tell you, there are no bullets left in this gun. You see?
He pulls the trigger, firing the sixth bullet through the rope of the second chandelier. Wadsworth is perplexed. Scarlet shrugs, embarrassed.
1 plus 2.
Plus 1.
Camera cuts to the chandelier rope. It frays faster than even the last one. Colonel Mustard counts on his fingers.
2 plus 1 is...
The second chandelier shatters on the floor behind him. He jumps forward, scared. The camera freezes. The black title card appears on the screen, reading in all caps. That's what could have happened, followed by another reading. But how about this? We cut back to the hall. Wadsworth has just turned on the lights, as we saw before.
In the dark, the murderer ran across the hall to the study, picked up the rope and the lead pipe, ran to the billiard room, strangled Yvette.
He wraps his hand around Mrs. White's throat, pretending to strangle her, lowering her to the floor.
ran to the library, hit the cop on the head with the lead pipe.
He throws Mr. Green to the floor and knocks Colonel Mustard on the head, miming the lead pipe.
And coming out of the library, the doorbell rang. It was the singing telegram. The murderer picked up the gun where Yvette dropped it, ran to the door, opened it, recognized the girl from her picture, shot her, and ran back to the cellar.
Cellar.
Yes.
He pulls Mrs. Peacock with him over to the cellar.
But Colonel Mustard wasn't in the cellar.
No, but you were.
Mrs. Peacock sharply removes her glasses.
So?
You murdered them all. You were the person who was missing when the cook and Mr. Body were murdered. And the cook used to be your cook. Don't you remember your fatal mistake? You told us at dinner that we were eating one of your favorite recipes. And monkey's brains, though popular in Cantonese cuisine, are not often to be found in Washington, D.C.
Is that what we ate?
He covers his mouth and runs for the bathroom.
Why would I have murdered all the others?
Obviously, in case Mr. Body had told them about you.
So it has all nothing to do with the disappearing nuclear physicist and Colonel Mustard's work on the new fusion bomb.
No, communism was just a red herring. Mrs. Peacock did it all.
There's no proof.
Well, the gun is missing. Gentlemen, turn out your pockets. Ladies, empty your purses. Whoever has the gun is the murderer.
Mrs. Peacock opens her purse and pulls out the gun, pointing it at the butler.
Very well. What do you propose to do about it?
Mr. Green comes out of the restroom, shocked.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing at all. I don't approve of murder, but as I see it, you've done the world a service by ridding it of an appalling blackmailer and his disgusting informers.
But the police will be here any minute. What happens then?
Why should the police come? Nobody's called them.
You mean?
That's right. Now I suggest we stack the bodies in the cellar, lock it, leave quietly one at a time, and pretend that none of this has ever happened.
Great idea. I'll leave first, if you don't mind.
Be my guest.
Sorry.
No, my bad.
Mrs. Peacock uses the gun to wave the other guests into a group.
In fact, I think we owe you a vote of thanks.
The room goes silent, and Wadsworth starts to sing.
For she's a jolly good fellow, for she's a jolly good fellow.
The rest of the guests start to sing as well. Mrs. White takes a harmony.
For she's a jolly good fellow.
Which nobody can deny. Which nobody can deny.
For she's a jolly good fellow. She's a jolly good fellow.
When do I stop it? Okay, that was great, guys. Mrs. Peacock carefully slips out the door. As soon as the door shuts, the party stops singing. They relax somewhat.
I told you I didn't do it.
But what if the authorities find out what happened?
The FBI will take care of that. My phone call from Mr. Hoover? I work for him, of course. How else could I have known everything about you all?
There's still one thing I don't understand.
One thing?
Who was Mrs. Peacock taking bribes from?
A foreign power. Her husband, the senator, has influence over defense contracts.
Well, is there going to be a cover-up?
Isn't that in the public interest? What could be gained by exposure?
But is the FBI in the habit of cleaning up after multiple murder?
Yes. Why do you think it's run by a man called Hoover?
Outside in the driveway, Mrs. Peacock has her keys out and is getting ready to get into her car. The elderly evangelist steps out into the driveway.
Oh, Mrs. Peacock.
How do you know my name?
The kingdom of heaven is at hand.
He whips out a gun and points it at her. Spotlights flood the yard and cops pour into the driveway.
Take her away.
Take your hands off me. I'm a senator's wife.
The front door opens. Wadsworth, followed by the guests, run out onto the porch.
Wadsworth, we got her.
You see, like the Mounties, we always get on man.
Mrs. Peacock was a man?
Colonel Mustard slaps Mr. Green. Wadsworth does the same. Mrs. White plucks one of Mustard's suspenders.
Well, would anyone care for fruit or dessert?
The camera freezes again. We cut to another title card that reads, "But here's what really happened." Cut one final time to the hall. Wadsworth switches on the lights once more like before.
Sorry, didn't mean to frighten anyone.
You're a bit late for that.
Then there were 3 more murders.
So who did it?
Wadsworth starts to stride away.
Let's consider each murder one by one. Professor Plum, you knew that Mr. Body was still alive. Even psychiatrists can tell the difference between patients who are alive or dead. You fired the gun at him in the dark and missed. So you pretended he was dead. That's how you were able to kill him later unobserved.
That's right. He was the missing person in the kitchen after we found the cook dead.
But he was in the billiard room with us when we found Yvette screaming. If that's when the cook was killed, how did he do it?
I didn't.
You don't suspect us to believe that, do you?
I expect you to believe it. You killed the cook. She used to be your cook. She informed on you to Mr. Body.
We cut once more to the kitchen. The group enters. Wadsworth moves to the other side of the table. The guests stay close to the door.
You made one fatal mistake.
He sits in the spot Mrs. Peacock sat in during dinner.
Sitting here at dinner, Mrs. Peacock told us that she was eating one of her favorite recipes.
He stands slowly.
And monkey's brains, though popular in Cantonese cuisine, aren't often to be found in Washington, D.C.
Cut to the front door. Wadsworth opens the front doors.
Colonel Mustard, when we saw the motorist at the front door...
We cut to a flashback to the group huddle when the motorist arrived. Again, the events play on screen, Wadsworth walking us through them.
You took the key to the weapons cupboard out of my pocket. Then you suggested that we all split up. You separated from Miss Scarlet, crossed the hall, opened the cupboard, took the wrench, ran to the conservatory, entered the lounge through the secret passage, killed the motorist with a blow on the head.
Cut back to the present, now inside the lounge.
Like that!
He strides into the hall.
This is incredible!
Not so incredible as what happened next.
He starts up the stairs.
After we all split up again, I went upstairs with you. Yes, you, Mrs. White.
The butler stops on the landing.
And while I was in the master bedroom...
That's a flashback of Mrs. White hurrying downstairs.
You hurried down the stairs and turned off the electricity, got the rope from the open cupboard, and throttled Yvette.
Cut to the present in the hall.
You were jealous that your husband was stooping Yvette. That's why you killed him too.
Yes. Yes, I did it. I killed Yvette. I hated her so much. It did flames on the sides of my face, heaving breaths, breathing.
While you were in the billiard room.
Cut to a flashback, the events yet again occurring as the butler describes them.
Miss Scarlet seized the opportunity and under cover of darkness got to the library where she hit the cop whom she'd been bribing on the head with the lead pipe.
Cut to the present in the hall.
True or false?
True. Who are you, Perry Mason?
Oh, must have been Mr. Green who shot the singing telegram.
I didn't do it.
Well, there's nobody else left.
I didn't do it. The gun is missing. Whoever got the gun shot the girl.
Wadsworth pulls the gun from his pocket.
I shot her.
You?
So it was you. I was going to expose you.
I know, so I choose to expose myself.
Please, there are ladies present.
You thought Mr. Body was dead, but why? None of you have even met him until tonight.
Mr. Green understands.
You're Mr. Body.
Wadsworth grins and starts to chuckle evilly.
Oh, wait a minute. So who did I kill?
Wadsworth shrugs.
My butler.
Oh, shucks.
Wadsworth uses the revolver to wave the professor to join the group.
He was expendable, like all of you. I'm grateful to you all for disposing of my networks of spies and informers. Saved me a lot of trouble. Now there's no evidence against me.
This all has nothing to do with my disappearing nuclear physicist husband? Or Colonel Mustard's work on the new top secret fusion bomb?
No, communism was just a red herring.
Wadsworth runs to the front door, keeping the revolver trained on the party.
But the police will be here any minute. You'll never get away with this, any of you.
Why should the police come? Nobody's called them.
You mean, oh my God, of course.
So why shouldn't we get away with it? We'll stack the bodies in the cellar, lock it, and leave quietly, one at a time, and forget that any of this ever happened.
Mr. Green takes off his glasses and starts to put them in his jacket's inside pocket.
And you'll just go on blackmailing us.
Of course, why not?
This is why not.
He whips a pistol from his jacket and fires. Wadsworth tries to get a shot, but is far too slow. The butler is hit.
I'm going home.
Good shot, Green.
Wadsworth slides down the closet door to the floor. He looks at the blood flowing out of his chest.
Oh, very good shot.
Wadsworth dies. Mr. Green stands fully, lowering the pistol. He already looks more confident than he has yet during the night. Mrs. White steps up to him. He points the pistol at her.
Are you a cop?
No, I'm a plant.
Plant? I thought men like you were usually called a fruit.
Very funny. FBI. That call from Jagger Hoover was for me.
He steps up to the front door and grabs the handle.
I told you I didn't do it.
He opens the front door. Cops pour in. The elderly evangelist, the chief, follows them in.
All right, who done it?
The guests all try to explain, blaming each other. The cops, confused, keep pointing their guns at different guests. Mr. Green shouts above the din.
They all did it. But if you want to know who killed Mr. Body, I did. In the hall, with the revolver. Take him away, Chief. I'm going to go home and sleep with my wife.
Mr. Green turns to leave, grinning at the chief. The camera freezes one last time. Closing credits start to roll to the tune of Shake, Rattle, and Roll. The end.
Ow!
Yay!
Thanks for watching. Thank you.
Yeah.
You did it.
However many hung with us.
Wow. All right.
I don't know if
Thank
it's
you
still
all.
watching on YouTube, but whoever is, thanks for staying with us that whole time. That was fun.
Yeah.
Yvette, what are you eating?
Ice cream?
Ice cream.
I died. What was I supposed to do?
Do you have enough for the rest of the
You gotta get a
murderers?
snack.
Yeah, did you bring enough for the rest of us?
Josh said only for the murderers, but I'm not really here for that because I didn't murder anybody, so then I wouldn't get any ice cream.
Sherry either. Sorry, Sherry.
Well, we probably won't keep anybody too much longer, but I think everyone generally agrees. We definitely want to do this again in some way.
If anyone has any suggestions for what they would want to see us do next, we have some thoughts, but if anyone has suggestions, we're always here for them.
Leave a comment down below.
Except
for the bad ones.
Yeah. Feel free to drop a comment down here. If you follow...
I'm not gonna lie, I really want to be Sammy Sweetheart and just yell, "Run!"
Who wants to have the Fred Flintstone argument?
Yeah.
Don't visit cats again.
It's always cats.
Or feel free to,
We're all gonna have to learn how to sing really well.
So we can do
really
music.
well.
I think that's
So we can
part
do
of our
cats.
charm.
Not cats. I will.
Always
I
cats.
End it all if we do cats.
Dalton will do cats. Let's do it.
Only if it's the butthole cut, though. That's
Okay, that's good. Yeah, maybe the butthole cut we can do.
So for those of you, yeah, Dalton just revealed that too. I'm just wearing shorts. This is
me too. So yeah, we won't keep anybody longer. Thank you so much for
Whoever's still
watching
hanging
along
out
with
thank
us.
you.
Like we said, drop any comments you have down below or on our Facebook page. Make sure this video is going to stay up after this. Feel free to share it with anybody who has a couple hours to kill. And everybody just stay safe and stay happy. And we'll see you next time.
Now it's time to pay the
Keep
price.
social
Bye.
distancing.
Social distancing. Check in on everybody. Stay safe. Healthy.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.